What's up, everybody, and welcome back to another very special Pokemon Rants. There are many people in this hobby that we look up to and admire that have impacted us either directly or indirectly in a positive way. However, Charlie Hurlocker is one of a few in a handful that have fully transformed the hobby in ways that we won't be able to really fully comprehend or articulate here today. Taking his childhood introduction into Pokemon and perhaps that pinnacle moment with his beloved Southern Islands binder to spark ultimately what was a never dying flame. Then, not too far in the distant future, throwing gasoline on the fire with a little help from his high school friends and the band donating McDonald's cards to help him fulfill that collection. His passion, persistence, and dedication in Pokemon has led him to be now one of the utmost Pokemon experts in the world, consulting for some of the biggest companies and names to date in order to uplift and educate the hobby in ways that we would never would have dreamed about just 5 years ago. And for that, we're forever grateful. So to say that I'm excited would be an understatement. So therefore, I am ecstatic to have the time to speak and share what I know will be a insightful and valuable conversation here with Charlie. So without any further ado, I welcome Charlie to Pokemon Wonder. Welcome, Charlie.
Hey, geez, man, I hope that I die first so you can do my funeral. That's pretty cool. That's pretty cool. That's a lot. Thank you for those kind words.
Well, I hope you don't die first. Just to make sure we get that very clear.
Let's collect Pokemon cards together.
That's right. Let's do it.
Right.
And I've thought about this many times. I think I said it to PK at some point. I've always thought about, especially as I do the research, we probably shouldn't do these repetitive intros, especially for you. You've said it so many times. But again, I can't assume that people are going to see these massive amounts of backlog of videos. Maybe this is the first one. So if you would, sir, please give us the background. But I want you to go a little deep. Don't just say, hey, I got into Pokemon as a kid. What was that first experience? How did you dive into that first pack, that first kind of Pokemon introduction? Tell us just a little bit more than perhaps you have in the past.
Sure. Okay, so I'm a kid on the playground, and I didn't have packs. Man, I wish I had packs. I wanted packs. I knew I wanted packs. I didn't have them, but I knew I wanted them. And so, like, I remember having cards, but not having packs. Like, I somehow, you know how kids are, right? There's always it's one of those things where I understand that sort of like we construct systems of economics, and we have sort of this like very proactive role in setting it up. But whatever you believe, like, go to children on a playground, and I promise you will quickly believe that some of these things are just innate, right?
Yep.
Like humans are definitely making deals. Like, that's the thing.
They're
right?
creators.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah. And just the assigning of value and the trading of value and the this social process of mapping these things and assessing these things and trying to figure it out, and all of that's happening. And somehow I end up with the only holo card I believe that I ever received that was not a promo, an unlimited Ditto, and
okay.
I was so proud of that. And my mother was a preschool teacher, and to help me protect that card, she laminated it for me, which was incredibly kind of her. Truly an immaculate surface, I'm sure.
Prior to,
yeah. To this day, probably still immaculate. So I remember that, and then I remember, just like I wanted these cards so bad, and then the Southern Islands set was available in stores. You would think it was rare if you were looking at prices. Not rare. Absolutely not rare. In the slightest. A widely available product that I desperately wanted. And I remember like my uncles and my parents all pitching in. I have two uncles, and like pitching in and getting me the Southern Islands binder. And like, I truly believe to this day, I don't think anything has touched the Southern Islands binder in terms of like the value that you are giving a kid who loves Pokemon, right? Like,
The
Nothing.
number of hollows, the packs,
Oh my God. Oh. So
everything.
first off, you're guaranteed you're getting hollows, right? You open the promo pack, you've got hollows. Straight up. Booster packs, a binder to put them in, postcards.
Right.
Yeah, and I think again, like you said, don't worry about if it's repetitive. You've said it before, so I won't. I will just tell things. And
Please go through it.
it's always the first time. And like I remember even like years later, like my great grandfather passed away. We were going through like old photos. Yeah, and I found like a Southern Islands postcard. The orange crayon says like "I love you" on the back, right? It's like the cutest thing. And so like that is the origin, right? That is the depth with which this is woven into my childhood, into sort of like my earliest thing. Like I don't even know if I was thinking about it yet, but just like participating in commerce, in socialization, community, receiving a gift, like these very core like human things, right? And like right there, that's where Pokemon is, right? And so yeah, that's
beautiful intersection.
Yeah,
beautiful intersection. But the postcard you found from your grandfather was many years later, right?
Many years later, yeah. Probably like well, maybe something like 4 or 5 years. Many years when you're a young kid, right? My life had
right.
Life had
like, lifetimes ahead, right?
Exactly, yeah, for sure, literally, yeah. In hindsight, maybe it wasn't like a crazy gap, but yeah, I was a totally different person with a totally different brain by the time I found it, right?
So, yeah, fully understand.
Yeah.
All right, so that gets us in there. But let me ask you this: was it just the desire of seeing the other kids have something you wanted, or was there something about what you saw them experience? You said, "Wow, I want that feeling. I want to belong," or was it just, "Hey, the typical, they have a piece of candy. I want a piece of candy"?
Yeah, no, it's I mean, the answer is probably a little bit of both, right? Like I would love to editorialize like myself as a child and tell you that I had no carnal instincts whatsoever, and that I was just like, selecting from the Socratic table, like the philosophical gem of my life. No, I think I definitely wanted things other kids had. Like I think that was a huge part of it. I think that, again, these things being at the intersections of so many, developing experiences and like, early thoughts and these types of things, like I think that was absolutely significant. And so, what it allowed for was that at a very early age, this is how I am practicing these things. And so for the rest of my life, it feels like a natural way to do those things, right?
Right. It's intertwined.
So, absolutely. You can't undo it. And so, like, I definitely think that was part of it. Like, I would say that, the process of continuing to find love for it is much more complex. And, so like that is like not
marriage.
Yeah, that is not what motivates me today, right? Like the reason that I will choose to buy my next card will not be because of some kid on the playground. Like it just won't, right? Like I'm past that at this point. Yeah, exactly. At this point now, it is much more like I am choosing to engage the world in these ways through this product. Like I have chosen that this is going to be a means by which I do friendship and a means by which I do collecting and the curation of beautiful things in the world and play and all of these things. So
I love it. Charlie, that brings us to a really good kind of point where maybe we jump ahead just a little bit and we talk about what your background is. I like to have that as context. I know, obviously, the job stuff we'll get into in a little bit, but you finished high school. Where did you go next? Did you go to college? I know you struggled a little bit financially with the idea of college and come from some humble backgrounds, much like myself. Couldn't really afford much, which is why I ended up having to go to the military myself. But did you eventually get through college? I didn't quite catch that in my research.
Yeah. I did to a 4-year institution. I triple majored in humanities, philosophy, and theology at Indiana Wesleyan University. I worked at the same time that I was doing that. So like I've always worked. Like that's the thing. Like I took a job working seasonally in 6th grade at a cookie company. I had a kid in my
Packaging.
class, whose parents owned like a small, like a regional chain type thing of like cookies. It's called Blondie's Cookies. They were on Shark Tank, which
I remember.
probably not relevant now, but back then that was a really big deal. So I kind of love that. That's kind of like an intersection, like a generational intersection, right? Because that will probably always mean something to people my age. It will certainly not mean anything to my kids.
No, not at all.
So yeah,
Under the table for quite some time. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. But I mean, I've been at that point I was already dealing cards, right? Like, what does it mean to be a dealer? Like, I think that's kind of like changed. Like, if you looked at what we were doing then, like you would probably not now, because like the market's so big, you would say, oh, that's like a casual side hustle thing. Except that like to produce sales back then at that volume took a tremendous amount of effort. Yeah. Like you really like you guys, like we don't canvas now like we used to, right? Like now we tend to choose a platform and we're like, is cross listing available? Like that kind of thing. Like, like back then we were making lists, we were updating them, we had spreadsheets, we had like everything, like probably handwritten, like
I was about to say, get some notes in there somewhere, sticky notes.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. And I like the Pokey Gym usernames that I remember was wild. But yeah, so I had started buying and selling the cards in high school, really. And at that time I'm also playing, so like was very fortunate. Yeah, very briefly. I was not good at it. I was lucky. We had a local card store.
Nice.
Very, very far pre-boom. Really, back then the only card stores are only existing because of Magic. Everything else is just ancillary. And so I was playing there, and like my parents were very like I benefited greatly from them not interfering at all. But like I was like definitely traveling with like, men not vetted 15 years older than me. Very fortunate that, the community pretty much self-regulates pretty heavily, right? Like, so like, I mean, yeah, for sure. Like people are up to no good, like they're not going to make it. You know what I mean? Like they're going to get shaken down like really quick. And so like I, even early on, like, in retrospect, like I have awesome experiences and awesome memories that were only possible because of this community of card collectors and card players who, have created these institutions like Friday Night Magic, and they have seeded that with such a wholesomeness and such a pure intent to just play and have fun together, that I think that has carried into other franchises and carried into like basically everybody doing cards. And so, yeah, so like I was, playing in, I did state tournaments like that were nearby, Indiana, Illinois, Ohio type stuff. And
nice.
Again, no success. I have no accolades. I had
no first place trophies. I got it.
No, I did win a gold victory cup. In North Central Indiana, at a library league. I beat a hovercat. Nice. That will mean something to a very select number of people.
Hovercat?
A hovercat. Yeah. The hovercats were like one of the first, like, again, so like we think of like pro teams. None of this exists. Is literally just like, hey, what if we gave ourselves a name? And in North Central Indiana, like if you look at like people who are part of the hovercats, like they actually have like some really solid, like they've got like multiple top fours at Worlds, like some really, really, really impressive.
So they're still around.
Stuff.
Wow.
Oh yeah, they're still around. Yeah. So I mean, they're all over the place. I mean, literally like the whole gambit. I mean, they're all over the world. At least one of them is a game designer now. So
very cool.
Yeah. I mean, there's only so much I can say about that, but yeah, that was the thing. So.
I love it. I didn't know if you played it. I was gonna kind of poke at that a little bit because I was curious. I know you don't really participate in the games. You're not really in anything else but the TCG
I think my last
space.
tournament was 2013. So
okay, you got some time.
Been a minute.
Dust it off. All right, good. So you got your degree, triple major. You went through a couple of jobs, which we'll talk about in a minute. And that kind of set you up on the path, and we'll actually connect that perfectly right here to what got you back in. So you were in school in band,
Yep.
So you took a little
Marching band.
hiatus. Yeah, you were in the marching band, and McDonald's started to release promos with Pokemon. So that really rekindled that fire, and thankfully nobody wanted the cards on your band, so they just gave them all
Right.
to you to help you collect,
Yeah.
which is great to get the perfect condition, right?
Right.
But that fueled that fire, and then that really stayed with you throughout your working career. And at some point, you started to see the fruits of your labor in the markets. I think you said at some point that there was 3 booms over the course of 10 years, 8 years, something like that nature. And that really sparked your ability to say, you know what, this might be a thing. This whole data entry job that I did, the working on the factory line, no thanks, no thanks. We're going to move it forward. We're going to focus on Pokemon. Is that about right? I get that right?
Yeah, yeah. So I mean,
I
and
skipped some things,
what's hazy is almost certainly hazy because it's hazy for me. Like I'm not. I told you beforehand. Like my memory is not amazing. So yeah, like when did I like what started the collecting was certainly those McDonald's promos. I recall buying and selling prior to that, but
Yeah.
not by much. So
Okay.
like I definitely was already like the very first time was, again, I was still in high school, I was still in marching band, and a friend, like, again, I had like no financial resources, like literally zero. Like a friend like lent me, I think it was $20 or
Yeah,
$25 or
$20, and you
something.
told me
Yeah,
to give
20
him
bucks.
25. Yeah,
Yeah, give him
in 3
25. Yeah.
days. Yeah,
Yeah, awesome for him, right? And it
good
worked
turnaround.
out. Yeah, it really
Yeah,
did. I paid him off. I really did. Stuck to my word. I wasn't gonna mess that up. Like that. It's even now. I'm
I
like,
was a
hey, the
lender.
last person I'm gonna upset's the bank. You know what I mean? Like, like that's. I
Pay
think
the money.
yeah, that's even like that's like a trope in like the old westerns, right? Like where it's like don't upset the bank. Like they're
The
like
bank and the sheriff. Yep.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, like there's like almost nothing alive in society, and you're in the middle of the desert. You don't want to upset the bank. So yeah, that was important early on. Learned that one. So yeah, I was really that was like the origin really of like the buying and selling, and like literally like to this day, like those pennies being flipped are why I'm doing what I'm doing. Right, like that. It never stopped. Like from that moment.
And please, Charlie, correct me if I'm wrong, but yeah, that was. And I may be connecting 2 different stories here, but you got that $20.
Yep.
You met a girl, or you knew a girl in high school that
Still
had a
marching
baby.
band. Yeah.
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 And she needed to get rid of her binder, so
Yep.
you bought it
She's
for
selling
$20.
Yep.
You then kind of wedged your way into PokeGym.net as a seller. You were
Yep.
able to sell that first $25. You had to move that around a couple of times through PayPal and through your dad, and eventually pay back the original lender.
Yeah, that was the hardest. The hardest part back then was
getting the money out.
I couldn't get the money out of the PayPal, right? So like I had paper gains, like that I can't access. So yeah, that was tough. There were a lot of shenanigans involved to make that happen, and yeah, I definitely did not break PayPal terms of service.
Right.
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 Yeah.
Underage, but
yeah. No. Yeah.
So that got you going. You paid him back, but then you made actually a little close to $150, $200 roughly from the remainder of that
over a pretty significant period of time. When I bought it, I did not think I would make $150. Like I thought I would make $50. Maybe. And I thought it would take me a year to do it. So.
But you kept the money there. So you stayed in PayPal.
Yeah,
you stayed as a digital asset.
100%.
And you moved over to eBay.
I mean, I was on PokeGym for a while. Like really,
okay.
But PokeGym was. I mean, that was all that existed. Like, I mean, so, like, I'm sure eBay did exist. Like, certainly it did. There's record that it did. Like, the margins were so thin back then. Like, 10% was a lot, and like actually, like the USPS, the whole like affordable tracked shipping, that comes in way later, right? So like, I mean, e-commerce was still very much growing at that point. It was nothing like what it is now. And so like the literal tools we were working with were just worse in every single way. Yeah, very primitive. So that was actually the significance of like, back then my decision making would have been like, I don't know if I can sell to strangers because like I'm not certain that they'll be honest if they get the cards, right? Like major concern. And so, like PokeGym's like forum-based feedback systems were huge, right? I mean, it solved a big problem. Yeah, it solved a big problem. So, and I just also wasn't like, I wasn't old enough probably to like really have like, I don't know if I would have been adept enough at the beginning to like use eBay. Like that's like a tool, you know, like you have to, like it's more intuitive now because like we just do more commerce. But like back then, like I would not have had the ability. Yeah. And I also don't consider myself a particularly like tech savvy person. Like I really like, I need to have like a good UI, right? Like, cause if I don't, like, you're gonna lose me, you know. Like
that's it.
Yeah.
If there's no easy button, I'm out.
No, for sure. I'm like the guy that like calls a tech, like I can't get my Bluetooth to connect. You know, like can you help me? Like,
hey Charlie, it's you again. Yeah, sure.
Yeah, for sure.
Push and hold the button.
I got tech guy saved in my phone. So it's a nice guy.
All right, well, good. So I got us started. I think we set some good foundations. We'll kick it off the rest. Before we do, as we typically try to do, is just say a quick hello to everybody in the chat. I know as for whatever reason, YouTube just wipes out the chat. That happens a day or two prior to. So I saw Dan in there. I saw BB in there. I saw Ryan. I saw a bunch of other people. So really appreciate you guys stopping in. Beerski was in there. But today, in the live, we have Trainer Glenn. We have Drew, number one mod in the game. Good to see you, Drew. iFOMO's in the house. Son of a Mert, Ken X. Good to see you, Ken. BB, thanks for stopping by again, my friend. Chef stopped by. He's busy tonight, working hard in the kitchen. No worries, buddy. No worries. I know how it is. We're a little bit earlier today. We're getting older, so we got to start a little bit earlier and then go home and take care of their family. So this one's about 2 hours earlier than usual. We got Ryan in the house. Good to see you, Ryan. Dan's in here. Good to see you, Dan. I don't know if you make it, so I'm glad you stopped by. Fat Belly Collects. Good to see you, Boondock. Jester Beats. Retro. Good to see you, Retro. Walrus in the house, always supporting. Appreciate your Walrus. Much love, buddy. Skate Ernesto's in here, Hub Style, Navi Station, and a few others. So great stuff. Thanks so much, everybody, for stopping by. As I always say, deeply appreciate your time. I hope you enjoyed today's conversation. So let's keep it going. Let's transition a little bit over, Charlie, to the collection side. As we kind of all know, you've amassed a huge collection at this point. Obviously taking you a lot of time. I mean, you've said it many times over the past years, but some of your goals, like your Versus collection, took you 11 years to complete. I mean, that's no small task. Very few people try for their collections for 20 years, or excuse me, 11 years. So where you're at now, though, where does it leave you? What are you looking at next? What's your vision on to collect other than the latest promos that come out in Japanese?
Yeah, I mean, so if anything, it's just gotten more esoteric, really.
Nuances.
Like, yeah, there's just so much. There's so much stuff that's like, it's just cool. I mean, oh my goodness, like the amount of like test stuff that comes out, like now. I mean, we never like imagine that. Like, I don't know that everybody is really understanding like how significant Akabane dumping all this stuff on the market is. Like our understanding of availability and what could be owned is being radically shaped right now. Like the people today, like they will never be able to understand like really what made the Illustrator what it is, right? Because like the Illustrator and its prestige comes from a time when, you know, we believed in these very firm numbers, very limited. We had a good idea of some of the ways that it went to people, you know, like obviously there's like the core distribution or whatever. Even early on, we were aware that there were at least a couple people that had them that definitely did not were not involved in the contest, you know? But yeah, like that is really like the origin of that. And that is not the case. Now, I mean, we've seen so many more, you know, copies that shouldn't exist or whatever. Like the illusion has been shattered. And so that's good and that's bad, right? I mean, it's great if you want to own an Illustrator.
I would say, yeah, if you want to get it, yeah.
If you want to get an Illustrator, this is the best thing that could ever happen to you. And, I mean, it hasn't, interestingly, you know, like history has charted such that like the demand that grew from the prestige it earned in a different time has carried the price through these extra copies. Like, we're not
which
having
says a lot.
price issues. It does, yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
But like with sort of like, I think Illustrator is easy to talk about, but I mean, really, I think
that's
like
fine.
these test copies, like, prototypes, like stuff like that, like first off, the Pokemon Company, I mean, they got to be livid. You know what I mean? Like, it's very clear that there was like a serious falling out, right?
Yeah.
Like, because if you understand even just a little bit of Japanese culture, like, this guy is not on good terms, right? There's no way. He's choosing to sell this. I don't know if he feels let down, kicked out, spited. I don't know. But there's something there, right? Like,
I mean,
I don't
even
know
from a pure company perspective, I mean, just taking assets like that from the company, much less from the Japanese culture.
Okay, understand though. I mean, the times that Akabane would have gotten these don't have value, right? And so, like, you can't expect that the company, which does not perceive a value, which is before the trading card industry itself exists, right? Like, why would they be setting super strict terms on like how, like, what happens with these cards? Like, it's easy in hindsight, you know, like the company now, it'd be a no-brainer, right? But the companies now exist because of the work that was done then, right? I mean, it's like these people didn't create an IP within the trading card industry. They created the industry. That's crazy, right? Like,
I love that. That's a good perspective.
Yeah.
All right, so go back to what you're looking at. What is it? What's on your view?
I don't know, man. It's like I got a bunch of autographs, but like I still, you know, like I am so attracted to the idea of like artists drawing Pokemon, right? Like, and that's typically really done on Shikishis. Like, and so like my collection is so small of that stuff, and yet it's probably one of the biggest collections in the world, and it's minuscule, right? Like I don't think I have a dozen pieces, right? Like, so. And you know, obviously the conditions under which these are being produced is tighter than it was even 5 years ago, let alone 10 years ago, you know? And so, you know, like the window on it has dried up, and yet more pieces are seen than ever before, because that drives value, and value pulls things from the corners of the closet, you know, in the corners of the earth. And so it's, you know, that kind of stuff. Like, I'm just so interested in it. And, you know, I'm very, you know, hesitant to post about most of it. You know, I posted one really, really cool piece that I absolutely love, and the artist messaged me and asked me not to post it. And so I took it down, right? And so, like, since then, I'm kind of like, I don't know if I should post these things, you know? Like, I don't want people to get in trouble. Like, I certainly don't want to hurt my ability to get more, right? And so, and this is part of why I, like, I have such a weird relationship with social media. Like, probably one of the weirdest relationships, I think, maybe of people that do social media. So
probably not as much as you think, but tell me.
Maybe not. Yeah. I like the drama associated with sharing anything unique is just not worth the effort. And like, for me, I get 99% of the joy that I can have the moment I own it. Like, I collect for me.
Look at it, touch it. Yep.
Yeah, I love collecting. I love these things, right? Like, I truly like it. The item, I love it, you know, and that is why I'm buying it. And so there are lots of valid reasons to collect, right? I think that like people are way too hard on people that are like, he doesn't keep anything. Like, okay, but like, there are totally other valid reasons. Like, you know, like hanging on to these forever is not the only real end game, right? Like, I mean, to do it socially is totally appropriate, right? Like to do it because you love buying and selling. I mean, you're still choosing to do that through our medium, you know? Like, we should feel blessed that people are choosing our medium to do these things that they would do anyway, right? So, yeah. So, but anyway, like, you know, you post things, and like I haven't found that it helps me get things. Like, especially like the more obscure you get, you know, you're far more likely to be like, hey, don't do anything with this. Don't tell people, like, don't post anybody. Like, and so like, yeah, exactly. Yeah. And so actually developing a reputation for being discreet has significantly helped me in growing my collection. So
Yeah, unless you're posting out there, much like Jack or Zach, excuse me, Jim meant,
Yeah.
unless you're posting out there for getting help to complete your PSA sets. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, and also like I mean, again, like I have like a billion opinions on like grading. So like one of the things
Really?
like
I never
yeah, I do. Yeah, it's crazy. But like one of the things is like and I look, these people that like are like huge registry collectors are like my friends. Like I love them and I respect them and I love everything they do. Like I will not be caught dead letting a company dictate how I collect. Not gonna happen. You know what I mean? Like it's not gonna happen. Like I'm not interested in your checklists. I'm not
Yeah.
interested in you defining the value and thus the joy that I derive from these things. Like it's not gonna happen. So I love grading. I grade all the time. I have graded cards in the background, you know, like stacks of them. Like I love grading, and I've put a significant portion of my career into it because but for me, like things I love about grading are not necessarily like the ways that they change how I collect. I mostly like them from like a justice perspective and like a value add perspective. Like I think that people like it evens the playing field. Anybody can pay the same fee and they get the full outcome from their card versus like, you know, early on when I was doing it, like, you know, if I could assess condition and somebody else couldn't, I could just take advantage of them, you know?
I see.
Yeah, for sure. And like, that's still possible, right? People come in, they don't know what they have, right? I mean,
Right.
and you have two options there at that point, you know, and it's an integrity call. What are you going to do? What kind of a person are you? Are you going to ream this person for all they're worth? Because I've seen people that are considered very reputable people in the industry absolutely do that. And I have no interest in being like the person who has to set this standard. Like if you make $5, you're bad. If you make $4, it's okay. You know what I mean? Like I'm not interested in that. Like I don't know that that's a sustainable like thing. No. What is sustainable is creating systems that just solve for the problem, right? And I think grading is part of that. I think grading does that.
Grading and you know, PokeGem forums, perfect.
Absolutely, forums are huge. Yeah, forums have a significant role in that. Yeah,
I love it. All right, good stuff. We got a bunch of lurking here in the chat. Oh, this is fun from Kai. Charlie, how do I make a friends list card so I can stop hanging out with everybody on YouTube? I'll answer that one.
Yeah,
my wife usually will put it something like this. That sounds like a you problem, not a me problem.
Yeah. I would. Yeah, I don't know.
But we're all good people, Kai. All jokes aside, just kidding, of course. We're all good people. So if you're hanging out with us, hey, nobody's hating on you. Nobody's hating on you. All right, so we kind of see that you're dabbling. That's all right, but what actually keeps you excited? We talked about it just a little bit in the very beginning, and I kind of correlate this or have an analogy back to a marriage. In the beginning, it's really easy. The longer you go, the more effort you got to put in, the more energy you have to make that exciting and fun and enjoy it just as much as you hopefully did in the beginning. So how are you keeping this exciting for you in Pokemon hobby after decades?
Sure. This will, in classic Charlie fashion, let me contextualize this question a little bit.
Please.
I've talked a lot before about like, I call it protecting your joy. And I think that this is true, not just in collecting, but in tons of aspects of life, where I think that in a world where we are choosing to say, like, I want to have fun, I want to play, I want to engage in an enjoyable way with whatever it is that I am doing, the nature of protecting your joy is sort of this hidden metagame. And in it is, you know, like other things are predicated on it, longevity being the most obvious, right? Like, okay, I can do anything and have fun, but how do I do it for a long time, right? That's a much different question. And all of the answers that come from it, when you're framing it that way, really are very different.
It changes.
Yeah, absolutely. And so and seeing it that way, I think that certainly I take that as a little bit of a personal challenge, you know, like, and that brings me joy, ironically. And so I love the idea of like having chosen to do this and then like continuing to do it. And then like that for me, like, is a problem in the industry. And so by battling it myself, like, I am more prepared to help people have a long, satisfying experience. And so, and I want to bake that into products, right? Like, I want the industry itself should be solving for this, right? Because, 30 years ago, they didn't think about this, because really the only equivalent you would have is a tabletop board game. This idea of expansions and of taking your core value and adding more and stretching it out and pulling people one quarter at a time forward into continuing to engage with your product is relatively new, right? For what we do. I mean, certainly
in TCG space,
in the tabletop gaming space, or in the paper-based gaming space, or whatever, however you want to categorize it. But like, I mean, certainly it exists before that too, right? I mean, people have played sports, right? And in sports, you want your friends to keep playing soccer with you. Right. So you better make it fun, right? Like, you have to solve for that. Yeah. Right. And so, so for me,
kids in the playground, that's another.
I mean, for me, I would say that, like, I don't know that I've really, like, I don't know that I've hit hardship yet. Like, I don't know that I've had a tough time yet. Because I am still learning so much. Like, the point at which I don't feel like I'm just, like, learning is really when it's going to be tough. And so
you have a thirst for knowledge.
I don't know that that's everybody's motivation. I think probably a lot of people would find that pretty boring. I certainly find some presentations of that boring. I hate just sitting and being talked at like that. Like, that's what I'm doing to a bunch of people right now. But like, like TEDx, like, there are some people who would just live for that. That sounds miserable. Like, I just sit there and just, like, people just, like, talk at me over and over and over again. Like, that's way too much input. I would get overwhelmed. So like, but I'm still learning. Like, I think that that's a big thing. And, like, the way that I've kind of, like, done that in the last few years is, I spent all of this time on the retail side, but to actually go to, like, the production side, like the industry side, has been a complete game changer. Like, I know nothing. Like, really, it's like I'm back at square one.
Manufacturing,
for sure. 100%.
Yeah.
And like, for me, part of the reason that I hated college and loved trading cards is that, like, I really hate systems where the feedback doesn't feel real. Where, like, and so this is actually part of why I don't enjoy social media that much, is it's like, so I can get joy when it's like, I want to share this thing with my friends, and this is a way to do it. That makes sense. Putting something out there for the sake of increasing metrics, not fun, right? Not fun at all. Like, I do not care how many likes I receive. The idea of tweaking what I'm doing to increase its attractiveness to an algorithm, just drag me out back. That sounds miserable.
Shoot the dead horse that we're done.
100%. And that to me was like college, like, part of why I hated college. Now, to be clear, I was a 4.0 student. Like, I had no problems. Like, I graduated top of my class in high school and college, no issues. Like, I was good at school, but I hated it. And I hated it. Like, I'm writing these papers. Yeah, I'm writing these papers. Nobody benefits from them. This professor gives me their opinion on it, which I don't care about. And then they adjudicate a degree and confer it to me. And now I am a special star. Like, that sounds miserable. Now, making a product, and if people don't like it, they won't buy it. That's real feedback.
That's a real world challenge there.
Exactly. Yes. 100%. And how people benefit from it is obvious. I love that. Like, I don't ever want to do something where it's not obvious what good it does. Right. Like, I never want to have that question. And so, like, that dictates a lot of what I do. And it dictates, like, how I collect, how I do my collecting, like, with people and all of that. And so, like I find, like, meeting people in person, like, very gratifying, like, especially, like, these groups. Like, anytime I can be a part of, like, creating, like, a party or something, and there's, like, somewhere between like 5 and 50 people or something. Like, that's great. I love that. I love being a part of that. I love encouraging that. I will put my money into that. Like, that's the kind of thing that I like love to see, because it's just such a gratifying way of doing collecting. And so, yeah, there's more words.
That's okay. That's good. That's what we're ranting together. And it actually also explains why you like selling so much, because to your same point, it's an immediate gratification. They will tell you if they don't like what you sold them, at the price, the packaging, whatever it is, they will let you know. Yeah, it's very
selling specifically in a non-essential good, right? So, you do not need my Pokemon card, which to me makes it way more fair, right? Because the way you sell water is not the same. You know, like there's like a ton of questions about like equity and fairness and all of that stuff. But like, yeah, like whether or not I am willing to sell you my one of a kind Pokemon autograph is not a justice issue. And I can say no. And I love that, you know, like that is freeing to me. And so, and it makes it more gratifying when a deal is made, right? Because at that point, both people have decided, like, I am happy with this, right? Like, and so that matters a lot.
Fully agree. Thank goodness we're not in the toilet paper industry. Retro, I'll get your question next. Give me 1 second. I just want to touch one thing that he said around knowledge and your pursuit for knowledge. And one of the statements you made, and this may not be verbatim, so you probably won't remember anyway, so it's okay.
Yeah, I don't remember. You could tell me it is verbatim, and I'd be like, wow.
You're like, oh, okay, yeah, good. That sounds great. Yeah. You said, I am driven by the pursuit of knowledge generally, and the pursuit of what it means to be human specifically.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's very true. Humanities degree. But selling
falls right in line. But it's a beautiful thing, because how you're still able to find that pursuit of knowledge and connecting, and it actually ties back beautifully as well to our topic on touching this back to your childhood. You learn core fundamentals of what it is to be human while interacting and intersecting with Pokemon. And I think that's a beautiful way to kind of see the whole picture and step back and say, oh, this is why it means so much to Charlie Hurlocker and why it's so integrated. And you can't just take it out. I don't see you walking away from Pokemon and say, you know what? Yeah. I'm going to sell cars tomorrow. It's like, no, you're not. You're coming back.
Yeah.
Don't kid yourself.
Right.
You're here with
us.
And
I wouldn't do that anyway, because people actually need cars. Like, I have to stay in this world. Like, if you need something essential, I cannot be the one to sell it to you. Like, I really can't. Like, I just have to sell people things that they choose to want, you know? Like,
it makes it somewhat more enjoyable somehow, ironically. Got one here from Retro. Good to see you, Retro. Can Charlie speak to getting to the next level for someone who's been grinding for a few years and, you know, is kind of at the point where they want to step it up to the next level?
Yeah, that's interesting. You know, like I think that, like, one thing with collecting that I think people make a mistake with is that I think it's really easy to, in a gotta collect them all world, to look for breadth, when I find that going for depth is almost always more satisfying, and the end result is almost always cooler. You know what I mean? Like, so if we're talking about like taking it up to the next level, like, I really think that one of the best ways to do that is to find an area of collecting that you feel particularly great at, and then do it better than anyone else. You know what I mean? Like, love it more, right? Participate in it with others who also feel the same way, and you will discover any number of amazing ways that people have found to take it to the next level, right? And so, yeah, I think like that. I think that's like I think it's really easy to say, like, I want to take it to the next level. Okay, I just got to get more. I got to get everything. I gotta, you know, I just need a bigger checklist. And I just, that doesn't really like resonate with the way I do things. Maybe the registry collectors, I don't know. But like for me, like it doesn't do anything. Like, yeah, just kidding. I love to give them hell because like all the people winning the registry awards are like my best friends. So it's always funny. And I like, yeah, like a lot of the like greatest people like really love that. But that's, you know what, when they have the mic, they'll argue for it, right? Like that's
right. That's their count.
Yeah, it's not my soapbox. So yeah, I mean, I don't know if that's helpful. I hope that's helpful. But that's how I would do it, and like I can give you even examples. Like when I think of like collections, they're like really cool. Like my friend Joe, like RNG-Gamez, like just like, hey, I love these miscuts, you know what I mean? And then just went like so ridiculously deep on it that now like when people think about these things, they think about him, and like I think of like Rusty's uncut sheet collection. He was collecting uncut sheets before it was cool, right? And like that's like so cool, like that's so gratifying, right? And like my friend Scott Pratt, who has trophies like early on, right? Like now trophies, because of the dollar figures have become sort of this like, oh, we talk about them all the time. It was totally a niche collectible, like back in the day, like not that long ago, but like 10 years ago, it was super niche. Like, I mean, and like, it was funny too, is like back then, like I actually think like if you polled most people, they would have thought it was super lame. I mean, most people,
this doesn't even look good.
You didn't win the tournament. Like, why do you want someone else's trophy, right? Like, that's kind of like, that would have been the dominating way of thinking, which is obviously so outdated. Very few people, I mean, players still think that way for what it's worth. Like a lot of players still think that way. But, Pokemon as an IP has been taken over by the collectors. So.
And you said it here, Retro. I was actually going to comment the same. So I think great minds think alike here. He was probably referencing more on the business side. So if he's grinding, because Retro's been a heavy grinder on the Japanese business side, but he wants to step it up. And by the way, Retro, going to take a finance job isn't the answer.
Yeah. No, I mean, like, okay, yeah. Like, if you want to take it to the next level, you need to find a sustainable competitive advantage. That's the answer. So, like, as long as you are participating in an industry where you have no advantages over anybody else, you're like, there's just a limit. I mean, you can become more efficient than the next person. That would be sort of like when I think of like, okay, who did not take a sustainable competitive advantage, but actually just got so efficient and so robust that they're winning. ZNG Emporium is somebody that comes to mind, right?
ZNG
like somebody, somebody that did, like anybody can sign up for a grading dealer account. You know what I mean? And anybody can take consignments, but you kind of just like you fine tune it and you just do it better, right? And I believe that is a value add. I have a high opinion of sort of like that type of thing. I have obviously participated in companies that were highly operational, and that is great. That's a huge value add. But that is not a sustainable competitive advantage, right? There's nothing you own that other people cannot have, right? And so like figuring out what that is really tough. I think that there are lots of ways that people have answered that. Moving to Japan is something that most other people cannot do. In a world of e-commerce is not amazing, but I mean, Japan is so far behind on sort of like this digital e-commerce way of doing trading cards, which I think is what makes them cool and unique. I think going there actually partially undermines that a little bit. Is that good or bad? I don't know. I would do it. Like I think that some things are inevitable. But yeah, like I think that would be like a sustainable competitive advantage, right? Because your competitors who are selling in the U.S. market, I mean, they can't just go live there. But that's still, I mean, that's obviously incredibly hard. Like, do you want to do that? I don't know. Like, you certainly like in the pursuit of a sustainable competitive advantage, there are very few people who should like choose to do that and just like not be near family. I don't know, like whatever else in your life would maybe motivate you. But some people don't have like any roots, right? Like, and those people. Right. A lot of those people do end up like they like go to Japan or something. Like, so that's like one example. I'm not recommending that one. I just like that's an example of like how you might in a world where everybody's doing the same thing. How do you establish sustainable competitive advantage? The other is probably like to form a community, right? Like if you're really willing to like pour effort. I mean that is hard, right? It is hard, but if you manage to succeed, the rewards are considerable. And that is a sustainable competitive advantage. So, like, in that world, PokeRef comes to mind. My friend Nick. Yeah. And so, he's not doing anything that other people didn't do. There is not one.
We're still doing now. Yeah.
Yeah. New competitors pop up for him 1,000 at a time every single day. But he's managed to tap into a community, tap into a vibe,
Yep.
get those people aligned around him, and they're loyal, and there's loyalty that comes with that. That is sort of like, that is much closer to the heart of like what the LGS did, the local gaming store, like in the early day. Yeah. I'm critical of LGSs now. I love LGSs. I think they're tremendously valuable. What I'm critical of is I think there are a lot of people who in the last few years have opened LGSs, and what they want to do is just get like access to distribution. That's pretty much it. It's not cheap. There's no such thing as cheap product. The margins are terrible in this industry. If you're here for margin, you're just completely in the wrong place. So I think actually a lot of those people don't realize that. It's like, these boxes are $92 on eBay, and I'm getting them for $87 from the distributor. How is that possible?
Wait a minute.
Like,
10% fee. This doesn't look good.
Yeah, it's been that broken for a long time. Actually, that is a problem that Pokemon needs to solve. It's shocking to me that they haven't solved it. Policies like MAP are horrible. Don't do MAP, right? But like, there's obviously some issues here where product is getting from distribution to secondary markets without the middleman that's supposed to exist, right? Like, they should probably solve that. But yeah, like, I mean, LGSs that seek to develop a community, service that community, step up and create fun, create play, create spaces for these amazing things to happen is one of the greatest value adds in the entire industry. And so I love the LGS. And my only gripe is those that are not living up to that vision, right?
Yep. I couldn't agree more. So Retro, there you go. Advice: move to Japan. I know you have some Japan roots.
That's what I said.
Nothing else. You don't have any kids at the moment, so at least not that I know of that we spoke. So that's it. That's your advice. He knows them. Yeah. No, right here. Before we move off from collecting here, Charlie, one thing I need to know is how do you enjoy it? Because I know you have a room dedicated to your collection. Do you sit
Used
there?
to. My kid sleeps there now.
Okay.
I had a kid. Yeah. You get it. Yeah, for sure. Yeah. So it has moved. Like a huge portion is like in storage now. And yeah.
Okay. But how do you enjoy it? Because I mean, a big part of this is, I'm sure for you especially, is not just knowing you have it in storage. It's touching it, looking at it. Do you sit down and take a little bit of time every week or a month and just let me look at this stack of slabs that are something I've acquired lately, or flip through a binder? What is your way to enjoy it?
I mean, I really enjoy the whole process. So like one of the things I do is like, I actually I don't like visiting, like looking at my things a lot. Like I'm not somebody that wants to pull it out every week at all. I enjoy, and I hate, like, I love and hate organization. I love the idea of having everything in a spreadsheet. I can't keep up with it. Like I don't like the idea of like every purchase now comes with the burden of having to inventory it. That's not going to work for me. It's not. Yeah. Because again, I cannot protect my joy and do anything with collecting that becomes homework. It doesn't work for me. I just told you I didn't like school. You know what I mean? Like, it's not, I can't make homework for myself. That system's going to fail. And so I don't create those systems. And so like, I love acquiring raw cards and sticking them in a box and not having a system, and then going through that box. I told you I have terrible memory too. So I get to do this pretty often. Maybe a year later I go through the box. I'm like, oh my God, like I forgot about these things. These are so cool. You don't know what you're going to find because it's not sorted by value. It's not sorted by set. It's not sorted. Like, I just put it in the box. I love that. That will not work for most
treasure
people.
Hunt. Yeah.
I love that. I'm a huge fan of that. So like, that's part of it.
What we forgot about.
Yeah, for sure. Also, like, I've always had like a pretty aggressive rate of acquisition. So like, it's not that I don't want to look at the old things, but it's like I usually have something shiny and new. Like, I'm pretty, like, if anything, like, my entire financial livelihood is defined by trying to keep up with my Pokemon spending. That's like, yeah, for me, it's like, okay, like, okay, so I have to take care of retirement. I have to feed my family. They need a house. Those are just hurdles to be able to buy the Pokemon cards I want. And so like I do everything I can to try to make sure that those things are taken care of, so that I can guilt-free just buy the things I want.
Enjoy.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, because like I like Pokemon cards more than money, right? Like, and that's really big. Like, that's a big statement. It sounds small, but it's not. It's a really big statement. And there are people who like Pokemon cards like as a way of doing money. That is not me. Like, I legitimately like the cards more than money. I've ridden them up. I've ridden them down. Like I did not sell off massive amounts of stuff because the market went up. In fact, I missed almost the entire hype. There are a few things I sold. Like I was like, do you need 10 PSA 10 first edition base set Charmanders when they're going for $2,500? Like, I don't think you do. You know what I mean? Like, I was like, that's stupid, actually. Like, I'm going to take that money. So, unfortunately, I'm pretty sure the guy that bought those off of me used the money he had saved for a house, bought those, and now can no longer get that house. So, but I didn't make that call. You know what I mean? Like, I didn't. You did not need those Charmanders. You chose to buy those Charmanders. And so I feel clean and free, because if I'd been selling the guy water, charged him too much for water, and now he can't buy a house, I'm evil.
That's different.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. So, yeah, like this is why I have to think about these things this way and participate this way. So.
And that actually is a perfect segue into your time capsules. So you typically buy things between a 2 to 5 year cycle. Let's just call it a cycle, because it's not even guaranteed you're going to sell it in 5 years.
Those numbers have gone up, by the way. Yeah. It's pretty much 5 year minimum.
But you put a date on it, and you put it in your calendar, and like you go back and look at it 2, 3, 4, 5 years later, which I think is a little bit what you touched on there for going into this box that you hadn't looked at in so long. Oh, this is so cool. Was that more for a collecting perspective? Was it for business? What's your time capsule?
Yeah, no, that's business. I mean, so I cannot have present value in front of me. I have to commit to the strategy ahead of time, because if I have them in front of me, like every time I want to buy something new, I will look for money there, and I will flip through, and I will get suboptimal returns. So knowing that about myself, I've developed the time capsule method to sort of like protect myself from getting suboptimal returns, because I'm looking at what's in front of me. And so like, yeah, like I have like, there has to be a certain amount of like churn, like overhead. And so at different times, like, it's not like, there have been times where I like definitely like just went in and just depleted everything. So, like when the pandemic, like this is pre-pandemic, but when the turnarounds were getting really bad, I was like, there's no way these prices stay the same. Like, if the turnaround times are this bad, that's demand. It can't be anything else. I was like, my prices are going up. They'd already like given me like $0.25 increase, $0.25 increase, 50-cent increase. Like I already had like a few of these like small increases. And I was like, I just hit this breaking point where I was like, I don't care what it costs me, and I'm going to figure this out after the fact, in part. Like, I'm confident that I can figure this out. I need to send everything for grading, like right now.
This is when you sit in 30,000 cards?
More. Yeah, so I've said different numbers at different times. And so part of that was because I didn't know. Like, we were literally, I had like 2 guys who were just full-time logging like cards I was sending. I did not know in the moment how much I was really sending. Now I have all of those back, and I've also sold pretty much all of those cards. So I know that it was over 100,000. I think it was somewhere between 100 and 130,000 cards is like where we landed between CGC and PSA. So I know I did 50,000 with CGC, and I'm pretty sure it was close to 80 with PSA. But it's like a little bit fuzzy. Like it's not like perfectly linear. And then also like again, because I had such a short amount of time, it's not like I was like conveniently logging these things. Like I was like, just get them out the door. We'll figure it out. You know what I mean? Because I just had this feeling. Like I was like, this feels wrong. Something is wrong. Like there were too many red flags. Like I was just like, this is not going to handle. Thank God I did that. Thank God.
I know you stepped away and talked to your wife before you started that journey, because you were like, I don't know, it's a lot of cards.
Yeah, I didn't know if we were going to be able to buy the house. Like right. I had no idea. I had no idea. It was a huge leap of faith.
And
a big bet on myself.
Obviously, it worked out for you in part because of the way the market was at the time. You really could have put really anything out on the market at that time and been good. Do you?
Yeah, I mean, some of it worked out.
Okay,
Yeah.
I was gonna ask, like, do you look back on that, and do you have maybe the insight or the data to say, you know what, I really got wrecked because I didn't pre-grade, I sent a bunch of things in that probably shouldn't have been sent in.
Yeah, I mean, I took a bloodbath on the stuff I submitted to CGC because I was submitting prior to them opening. And so, like, I provided those cards, and then, I mean, people that graded with CGC know, like, they realigned their standards because, and this is, I was encouraging them to do it despite suffering, because the product itself, like, if you create something, and I am partially responsible for this. I was sitting with Matt Quinn at a table in Sarasota, Florida, deciding how we were going to grade cards. Okay, so I am partially to blame for this. We certainly didn't know, like, that I was out by the time they were, like, training all the graders. So, like, I certainly didn't know it would, like, pan out that way. But the system was very good on paper. Very, very satisfying on paper. That does not mean the end product is satisfying. It doesn't. No. It's a different question. And so, like, I think the very, very first iteration of CGC's grading, the problem was that it was just a tremendously smart system on paper that was not satisfying to consumers in the slightest, especially when PSA was giving them 10s all the time in huge quantities, right? Like, and I think that because we are in a hobby industry, we are more willing to accept a suboptimal result that is more satisfying. Like, I think that, like,
I agree.
Coins and paper money, like those grading systems, those are the people like Jim Michelson, who's like a head grader for CGC and a tremendous guy, a very, very, very good person. He comes from paper money, you know what I mean? And like Matt Quinn, like, he was a dealer, like a coin and paper money dealer. No, magic is his passion. But his career was coins and paper money. CGC knows those things very well, better than anybody in the world. And so that hyper meticulous system, I'm not surprised that it basically leaked into the trading cards, and that was not satisfying. So in hindsight, it makes a lot of sense, right? But yeah.
That was, 80,000 cards later, but
yeah, well, no, it's 50,000. I did 50,000, I think, is like the total number that I did with CGC. But I mean, like, again, like, they're my friends. They're good people. I do think it's a good company. I really do. And I trust their motivations more than anyone. Like, because I know it better. So I know
them personally.
I really do, like, at a personal level. And they're very, very, very good people. And so, like, it's been a soul-searching mission. I mean, you launch a product, like, I think it is kind of crazy that it's like we expected this product to not change fundamentally at all within its first couple of years, right? Like, that's kind of crazy.
It never worked that way.
It's no company ever has worked that way.
No.
And I mean, it shouldn't work that way. Like, that would be bad.
Not unless you want to die.
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, like, also, like, the way that PSA assesses Pokemon cards has changed. Lots of people avoid old certs because they're like, oh, the way they treated these corners is just not the way we think about the corners today. You know, like, that's very common, right? And so, like, it's just like, this is the challenge of coming in as like a second competitor versus having the advantage of, like, you pick up your customers over time and there's no competitors, right?
Well, I in part laugh because I always think about the question that comes up. Hey, has your grading standards changed, to PSA? And it's like, well, no, they haven't changed. We're just doing them better.
Yeah. And so and that is like, there's like, has the practical outcome for customers changed? All the time, multiple times, lots of times, right? Like, again, this is like one area that I feel very confident speaking from, because, like, I think there are very few people who have graded as many Pokemon cards as me, like, with either company. Like, absolutely, I've been grading PSA cards for a long time. Like, it's changed. I got my last sub back last week, and, like, I was sending cards off over 10 years ago. Like, so, like,
oh wow. Oh.
Yeah, like, a really long time. Dude, the first time I graded, my friend Jason lived in Canada and had an account. And I mailed my cards to Jason. Jason mailed them to PSA, received them back. I paid customs duties. I paid shipping fees out the wazoo. Like at the time, I think PSA was charging like $5-6, and my all-in cost was like 16 per card. But yeah, it worked out great because I mean we were buying gold stars back then for $50. So
you got 9s and 10s on your Umbreons, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, I think I got a 10 on my Umbreon and a 9 on Espeon or something like that.
Yeah.
I don't know. You could probably go through, like, I'm pretty sure I posted it on E4. Like, I think you could go through the E4 archives if you wanted and find it. But
I think you said something like, I sent in like 8 cards and I thought I was a baller.
Yeah, I mean, 8 times 16, that was a big investment back then. Like, it's like most people's collections could have been purchased for $100, right? Like,
well, you bought your kickoff or Kickstarter with $20, so yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So
E-Unit here, Charlie's a goat. Yeah, good to have you here with us, Charlie. Good to
I see ribs. Hope you like cooking. That looks good.
We got Skater Nesta said Charlie's responsible for the backlog. Call Rattle.
Right. Yeah. The backlogs are stunning. You guys would like me even less if I was running the companies because I wouldn't have let the backlog form. I would have shut down services earlier.
Nope. Down. Shut it down.
Yeah.
I think this is a great way for us to also speak now to kind of your career.
Mm-hmm.
We kind of touched on it indirectly, but walk us through. I mean, obviously we saw early on you were in the factory packaging candy, moved to a data entry job, moved over to Pokemon. But then eventually at some point you worked your way into Ludkins. And then what I never heard you say is how you got in with CGC. They were wanting to get into to the TCG space. Did you reach out to them? Kind of walk us through some of the details and the path of this.
Sure. So, I was a college student, and I, was asked basically to come on and to form like an operational entity for Ludkins in the US. It was a UK company, and even at the end, it was always a UK company, right? Like, I mean, you could see it actually in the way that it's spelled. Right. They spell collectibles with an A instead of an I. So it's always, which used to drive the US customers insane. Like they always spell it wrong, and it's a huge problem. Anyway, so I was doing operational stuff for them, and like on the US side, had a tremendous amount of success in essentially building a funnel. And what was interesting like about it that I don't think people give enough credit for is that like a portion of it sure was like people who would maybe have graded with PSA anyway. But like I would guess that probably 80% of our customers would not have graded if they did not have a middleman. And so like that success of building a community and then also being able to build a successful system for other people to run their own communities and then use. So like we didn't actually like on the US side, we did not solicit most of our sales. We primarily were B2B. And so we would go to communities and, give them insurance. I was one of the first people parroting insurance. I was very like, I realize I knew nothing back then, right? I was fresh out of college. Yeah, exactly. And also like the industry was just so different. You know what I mean? Like just very, very different. My first 100 cards I submitted were entirely from friends, right? And so like that system, like creating a system where somebody could take a ready-made package of essentially a services suite and implement that in their community, and they have insurance. Insurance is easier now because like the industry has grown, and so Collect Insure has responded, and now you have like the solution that lots of people know about. It was hard. I spent months every day, 8 hours a day, calling people, trying to get them to write me an insurance policy. And there's no language. Nobody knows how to write language for these cards. And they can't take my word for the value. And so the reason they wouldn't take it is because they're like, if we don't know how to process a claim, right? It's not that we don't want to insure your collectibles. We know how to insure collectibles, but in the claim process, we have to be able to like identify the value of these things, right? And so, and like, what is fair market? There's no experts, nothing exists. Nobody's doing appraisals, right? Like it doesn't exist.
Wild West.
Yeah, it's the Wild West. And so at least they felt it was the Wild West. They probably still do. You still can't get bank financing. That's a universal problem. Like nobody can get bank financing if you have a trading card.
They don't understand it.
They don't understand it. They literally will value your cards as bulk cardboard, and they will give you loans on the weight of the cards. Asinine. Anyway, that's another
that
soapbox.
explains why I see all those eBay posts for 10 pounds of cards.
Right. Yeah. So anyway, like, building that system was pretty revolutionary, and nobody, like, later on there were other people, like, as the market picked up, and so, like, there were, like, some other people that, like, did pretty well, but we were, like, the third largest, including sports, was just the US funnel. And I was marketing that internationally. Yeah, I was marketing that internationally. So we were getting tons of submissions from around the world. I had friends in Australia, friends in Italy, friends in, like, some of these different places. But yeah, like, that system was compelling. And so, if you're CGC, even when CGC started, the industry was not big, right? Like, we had not solidified ourselves as some massive industry. It hadn't happened yet. And so, like, because remember, CGC started, I signed on with CGC like a year before they're selling anything, right?
Because this puts us, what, at 2019? Where are you at in this timeline? 20, roughly.
Dude, I'm bad with years, to be honest. Yeah, something like that. Yeah. Okay. So I think it's like I think it was with Ludkins 2017 to 2021. Yeah. 2021, I had already been working with CGC for a year. So it's basically I was not involved with the company really. Like, I'd already trained a guy and he was already, like, running it basically. And so, like, there's, like, a gap between when I, like, actually left. And the biggest reason for that gap was strategic. We were really afraid about, like, people, like, knowing me more than the brand, because I had done so much of the customer service and so much of the interpersonal reactions or interactions. And so, like, there was, like, an intentional gap of, like, okay, well, let's have a different name answer the emails for a while and make sure people are okay with it. This business might not be viable.
Can't have it built around you.
No, you can't. You can't. I didn't want it built around me. It's just, like, that's how it happened, kind of. And it wasn't, like, even then, like, I think that it very quickly became not built around me, which is exactly what I wanted, and it was great. And because when I announced, like, that I left, like, I didn't hear anything about, like, a dip in submissions or anything. So, like, I assumed they did okay. So anyway, I left, and, CGC had hit up me on Instagram.
Really?
Yeah, literally. They were like, hey, like, we're looking for somebody who can do, XYZ and serve, as a subject matter expert for Pokemon cards. And so, like, I'm pretty sure, like, they went to Scott Bratt and me, like, and those are the two people that they had contacted, and Scott wasn't interested. So they flew me down to Sarasota, and I talked to them about what they were trying to do, and they seemed pretty earnest, and I liked the idea of there was no real opportunity for me at the time to go to collectors, like, or PSA or anything. So, like, it's not like I had, like, an opportunity to convert that into sort of, like, a greater career. I knew I didn't want to do that forever. Like, I didn't want to do, like, operations for a middleman service. One of the things, like, that really, like, I hated was customers would have a problem, and the only way I could solve it is just, like, hoping PSA will solve it,
Right.
Like, and so it ends up being this absolutely terrible process of just, like, hey, PSA, like, it's another day. We got 10,000 cards, so of course something goes wrong all the time, right?
Of course.
You're really experiencing the full range of, like, what they have that goes wrong, and just begging reps, like, please fix these things, like, please this issue. So, like, not being able to solve, like, my customers' problems for me, like, I couldn't do it. I couldn't do it anymore. And so CGC was an opportunity to fix that in a way. Like, that's what it felt like early on. And then, like, what I did there, like, adapted a lot. So it started as, like, very much like crafting the grading, what will this product look like, sit on a lot of those meetings. Very quickly became, like, we have a practical need for a database. Can you please build out our database? Love or hate CGC, I don't hear a ton of complaints about their database. So that's great. Like, I think generally people are like, hey, like, they actually, like, early on, I heard a lot of compliments, like, hey, they really know what these cards are. So I took that as really positive feedback. I didn't design the label, so if you hate the label, like, I didn't do that. Obviously they based it off their comics. And then later, I think that they just decided, like, actually, like, our comics division is just an older demographic, and this brand recognition doesn't do us anything, and these people don't like it, so they tried to change it. Were they successful? I don't know. You be the judge. So, you know, that was with the origins with CGC. You know, they reached out to me. This is what they were trying to do, and then when I was there, kind of like it evolved pretty quickly, and I, you know, after that, it kind of like there's like a point, like there's definitely an inflection point. There was a point where like it was clear that they felt like they weren't getting their value, and you know, like it's very common in big companies. Like you have a contractor, you're paying them, and so like companies have a very short memory. So it's not like they're going to keep paying you because of something you did, right? Like you have no clout. Like it's not. There's nothing. You're a nobody. You're a cog, right? And so, like
even when you're not a contractor, even when you're in the company, it's the same.
Yeah,
thing.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. So like I had done like these very important things for them, and it was not impacting my day-to-day work at all, which is fine. It's reasonable even. And so, but like I was young, like it was my first experience really with doing like a high-level consulting thing. And so like at one point they were like, hey, we want you to like grade cards. And I was like, you know, that's not what I signed up for. Like it really is, it's literally not. And so the reason I stopped billing them like pretty quickly. We just took money off the table, and I was just like, hey, like I believe in this product. Like I'll stay on NDA. Like I'm willing to, when you have cards and you have questions about them, I'm willing to be that guy. Right. And I will do that. I'd rather receive no pay. It's kind of like the way that I went for it. And so like I was with CGC for just over, like, I think 3 years. Like I'm not 100% again the timeline, but I think it was just like right around 3 years. And I think I billed them for like 8 months of it. Yeah, like I dropped off payroll like pretty quick because it wasn't like for me again, like it wasn't about the money. I wanted to do something. I wanted it to be satisfying. I still believe that the industry needs competition to grow. That is very important. Like I think that it is very bad for the growth of the industry to only have just PSA's acquisition funnel for grading. I think that limits grading. I think it's horrible. And so like it really is like it's not just like that I wanted to disrupt PSA. I never thought about it like that. It was more so that just like I really believed that we needed competition. Like we needed other people doing things. And I think that like PSA, like I truly believe the only improvements that PSA has made in its service have been a result of CGC. Like since CGC opened, you know, recognizing errors, you know, recognizing shit like 99 base. You know what I mean? Like, I mean, you know what I mean? It's just like stuff that should have been. What are you talking about? Like literally, like sometimes I swear to God, they don't even try. Like they're not even attempting. Like I get so frustrated by that, and that's really because it's a sports company, right? Like professional sports authentigators. Like it's a sports company. They're literally not a TCG company. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, and I mean to this day, like I mean, if you look at like their employee scheme versus like the actual volume TCG receives, it is woefully underattended to. And so like I hate that. CGC fixed that. In their company, like it wasn't that way.
Dedicated,
like, dedicated to TCG, and they actually started them as separate companies to prove that commitment. They did eventually fold them together, which makes sense, like operationally. But even having started that way, I really respected that, right? Because they were like, this is going to be a competitive edge. And so I think that like doubling down on the emphasis on TCG has been like a competitive response, and I love that. I think that we've all benefited from that.
It's funny you mentioned that too, because I was just talking to iFOMO right before our podcast, and he's here in the chat.
Yeah.
And we were talking about PSA and just a quick little, you know, back and forth conversation. Basically, his comment was about them not reacting or being so attentive to the TCG space. And I made the comment, saying, yeah, they're very reactive. But you tied in the point that it happened after CGC, and that's exactly right. After they started recognizing the errors and all the details that they were missing or just rejecting full out, that's when things started to change. It was very reactionary.
If there's no market share to lose, why would you change it?
Yeah,
right.
Fully understand.
You just do what's easy. And I don't think that's a character flaw. I think that's how business is. You know what I mean? Like
it's all business.
All business. 100% of businesses. They are acting rationally and correctly. Like they are doing what they should be doing.
But they're there to maximize their profit margins.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. And if you're just like a crazy passionate collector like me, you're like, how do I solve this? I guess I have to change the industry, right?
And I love that, which is why we will now talk about Black Card X. So
sure.
Tell me. So I mean, when you
Black
leave
Card X
in,
is small. It's nothing. Don't.
I know, but
Yeah.
I do also anticipate, and you can once again tell me if I'm wrong. You don't play small. You start where you can, obviously.
No, yeah, no.
And
My point person at Black Card X would say that I dream way too big, and he is constantly like trying to keep up. So
so
yeah,
please, first of all, tell us what it is, what you're focused on initially. Obviously, the
sure.
website kind of says it all, but then I know that's not
No,
it. I want to see what's behind the scenes. I want to see what's
yeah.
here.
So
So where do you want to
Black
take
Card
it?
X, look, Black Card X is a landing place for my miscellaneous ideas. Let me just be honest about what that is. So I have had different ideas over time. So, and actually, like Black Card X has been, in many ways, my worst failures in the industry have been the things that I've done on my own. So, like originally, what I thought of for Black Card X was, so I have this chip on my shoulder about like I feel like the biggest companies in our industry, other than I guess not even other than like including the producers of the cards themselves, don't do enough for the community, specifically the collectors community. It bothers me that we have a multi-billion-dollar industry and the only conventions that exist or have a presence are the things that we've bootstrapped ourselves. And like like the promos generally suck. They're doing a terrible job with them. And I know that I ran about this all the time. And so it's like I just have this chip on my shoulder. Like I think it's stupid that Ultra Pro doesn't do more. You know what I mean? Like I think it's stupid that Pokemon doesn't do more. I think it's stupid that PSA doesn't do more. Like this, like, and it's not that I think that like they owe us something. It doesn't come from entitlement. It's that in order to grow, we need these things. Like the human interaction in a physical space is essential. So it doesn't surprise me that digital commerce takes over. They don't do anything in person. You know what I mean? Like it's like nothing happens.
Right.
And so
eBay's not going to do it. Yeah.
no, it's not. eBay does almost nothing.
Yeah.
eBay's a great example. It's like,
Yep.
why don't you do more? Right. And I like, and it will be part of my legacy. I am going to go to these companies as soon as I have the power and the stature to say so. And I'm going to ask them to do more. Because I just think we need more. And I just don't think enough happens. And I want to see more experiences. I want to see more community. I want to see like real dollars invested because I want us to signal as companies that we actually believe that these things are important, not just because we're willing to take their money, but because we're willing to participate with our own. And so what Black Card X started as was my idea was that I could create a warehouse and a fulfillment store that creates a common place for small creators of trading card supplies, because it was what was accessible to me, to sell their own goods. And so that was what it started out as. So where did that go wrong, right? Because that's not what it is, right? So where it really fell apart was that I did not like part of the process. Like the problem with small creators is they don't have money, right? And
Right.
so they cannot afford to take on inventory risk to support my store. So I took on inventory risk myself. I spent hundreds of thousands of dollars in placing orders with them. And then very quickly things went wrong. So, and then that becomes a problem because now I don't have the money to weather the storm, and neither do they. So what do? Right? And so this was ultimately the demise. And so some of that was because of its timing and proximity to COVID. So,
Right.
like
Came off the back of COVID.
Yeah. And I still think that these are all of the best creators in the world. So like one of the people I will point out is Darcy with Palms Off Gaming is one of the best people in the industry. I love him. I love everything he does. He has an Australian brand. Most of you probably haven't heard of it. He's just a really cool guy working really hard to do something he thinks people will like. I love him, and I did everything I could to support him early on. And so I placed a huge order with him. And in the process of placing that order, the world's global supply chain is falling apart. And so I placed the order, and it was very heavy in grading supplies, like card savers.
Right.
That was an awesome bet to make. If you remember the market for card savers pre-COVID,
They were out.
they were out.
You
Couldn't find them. And even if you could find them, I was looking at the way that the market was. I was saying, okay, like even if the prices are just flat, this is a good deal. And I can sell these. And I know how to sell them better than anybody because I've helped create a grading company, and I've created a huge funnel for grading for the other company. And there's only 2 of them at the time really that matter. No offense to BGS. I think they're very important in Texas. I just think that like overall they're like very small for Pokemon, right? Like literally you can see their numbers. You can look up their numbers. Like I'm not throwing shade. It just is this way.
No,
and so like I figured like this is a great bet. And so what I did not anticipate was the global supply chain falls apart. So I placed the order, the cost of plastics goes up. I get the order completed. I can't get a container to ship it to the United States. And so I'm racking up storage fees. When we eventually shipped it, I think the price was 10 or 11 times what we were originally anticipating. It destroyed my margin on the product. Once we get it, it gets to the port of Chicago because Black Card X is based in Indiana.
Stuck again.
Port of Chicago, they tell me like there's a national shortage. They cannot create more of the axles that the trucks have to pull 40-foot tall containers on. And so they literally can't get it out of the port. But that does not mean you are not accruing fees on a daily basis. So I'm getting more fees, and it's literally like I'm calling logistics companies, and they're telling me it's not possible. We can't get this out. There's nothing we can do. And so eventually, by the time we get the product, the grading companies are shut down. And there's no sign that they're going to pick back up. So the demand for these supplies is zero.
How do you feel in this moment, Charlie?
I mean, I don't know. It was like a headache professionally, but like my risk tolerance is filthy.
Pretty high.
Like for sure. So like, I mean, like even when like I'm the kind of person that like is like literally on fire, and like my response is like, oh, I'm on fire. I should do something about this. You know what I mean? Like that's kind of
get
like
some water.
Yeah, for sure. I'm a very like flat person when it comes to like reacting to those things, which is very good for being in business development, which is what I do. But
that's outwardly. What about inwardly?
I don't know. I think I was frustrated because like I had like a really good idea, and then I got like destroyed by macroeconomic conditions, which is just like really not fun. You know, like for me, it's like really satisfying to like do a cool thing. And so anyway, like, I placed the order, but ultimately I wasn't able to like place more orders because like, I mean, I still don't have my, like for what it's worth, I still do not have my cash out of that. Like that is still a huge portion of the warehouse is just storing these supplies. And I'll figure it out eventually. Like, I mean, maybe grading prices will be reasonable to the market value of what they're putting out again. Who knows? But like, yeah. So anyway, I'm still sitting on that. And so that was what I intended it to be. So how did it evolve? Well, so I couldn't stock it. And so, we turned into sort of like third-party fulfillment. And so we've done third-party fulfillment for Graded Guard and Phantom Display, which are 2 awesome companies. A handful of like other small people here and there, but those are kind of like the 2 main guys. So shout out to Simon and Min, both great guys. And that's evolved over time too, because like, their needs have evolved. And so like what it looks like to meet that. And I've done that like at a loss. Like I literally charge them at cost and then just do all the admin for free because again, like Black Card X was like what I wanted to do because I wanted to create value. So I've always been more interested in that. Like, like the last time I flew out, it cost me $1,000 to do it. I flew out and I didn't charge them anything else. So I actually just lost $1,000 to meet with them. You know what I mean? That's not good business in a way, but
I see a trend here, Charlie.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. That's why I said this may like on paper be my worst failure ever. But importantly, what Black Card X has done is it has consistently given me warehousing and fulfillment. And so what that means is that it does not matter how big the opportunity I identify is, I'm always able to take advantage of it. And so that has been tremendously valuable. So when they reprinted Remix Bout in 2021, which is one of my best bets of all time, and I talk about it because it's really easy to talk about.
Pallet.
I bought a pallet of it. I bought thousands of boxes. And, that obviously went tremendously in my favor. It helps me offset the losses from from all the plastic. But yeah, like if I didn't have a warehouse, like in fulfillment, like how could I have taken that bet? You just can't, right? And so you can't put that in your house. It's just not viable. I don't put anything in my house because like you never know. Like somebody gets your address and then what, right? You can't just keep value in your home. It's stupid. So yeah, so that's like how Blackheart X has adapted. And so it has been graded singles, it has been raw singles, it has been third-party fulfillment, it has been like an inventory type based company. It's been all these things. I never fixed up the website because it just doesn't do anything for me really, and it's not really valuable. So like I probably should change the website, but what am I going to do? Go spend money, like spend $2,000, $3,000 changing the website? Like for what? You know what I mean? Like it doesn't change like the way I do business. So you can still buy on the website if you want. Like I think you could only buy card savers, or
That's
something like that.
And some boxes, I think. Card savers boxes and maybe some booster box cases. Yeah.
Right, for sure. But like at different times, like I have done $1 million in business with a bunch of different companies: Golden, Heritage, PWCC, Rare Candy. I don't know if I'm at $1 million for Rare Candy, but I've done like a lot. And so, like just all these different companies, like just keeping relationships, staying engaged. I'd rather sell something at break even and have a relationship that's still a positive ad. You know what I mean? So yeah, that's what Blackheart X is doing.
What's the vision?
Alex works there.
Where are you going next?
Okay, so the vision is to have capabilities so that if an opportunity comes up, I can take it. There are opportunities that I'm identifying, flirting with, working with, that it is not advantageous at this time for me to talk about them. It's potentially a liability to talk about them. But I have I'm keeping it around. So obviously I'm not just losing money, right? Like
it's your net. It's your net. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. And also too, okay, look, I've got one guy that works there. It's Alex now. It used to be Nick. Both great guys. Like it allows me to do these things and not be alone. And that's important. I want to do these with people. You know what I mean? And so like I've always had one salaried worker who I can hit up and say one time a week, hey, look up the value of this thing. Like, hey, can you explore this opportunity? Like this thing came up. Can I put you in a meeting? Can you just take that meeting? It allows me to cycle that without having to like compete with what I do day to day. Okay.
I'm excited to see it. I know you have things cooking. You're too big of a brain guy to just sit back and say, I'm just gonna let this die slowly.
Yeah.
I don't think it.
November, where I'm gonna have something cool in November.
All right. Yeah. We heard it here, everybody. November. Let's step back.
Yeah.
Let's fold it back. But before we do, I just want to say a quick thanks to Java. I saw you dropped it some gifted memberships. Thank you so much, buddy. It's always good to see you. I know you probably got to go. You catch it back later. Thank you, man. I appreciate it. Dan's back, putting the kids to bed. Thanks, Dan, for jumping back in. I know Fat Belly had to jump out as well.
Yeah, no worries, guys. Dad chat, right?
Exactly.
Yeah, for sure.
Old Card Shop's in here as well. Good to see you.
How much more do we have on the questions? If you want to keep going for a little bit, I'm okay. I'll let you know when.
All right, cool. All right, I was gonna rush and kind of skip some stuff around. So
yeah,
good. I was hoping you'd say we have more time.
I know. I'm a sucker for it.
Tell your wife I'm sorry in advance. I apologize.
Yeah. She'll make it.
All right, so you got to look back on this now, and I know you do, because you're a very articulate and well thought out man. So looking back on the trajectory of your life where you are now, what's it like sitting back and saying, look at this journey? Because as Steve Jobs said, connecting dots, looking forward, you can't do, but connecting, looking backwards. You've seen now where this journey of the Southern Islands binder to here has brought you to this moment. And of course, there's still so much more to come. What are your thoughts sitting back and just contemplating on this?
I mean, it's one of those things where it's like,
Is it unreal?
No. I mean, it looks much bigger on the outside than it is, right? I mean, like I remember buying these cards. I mean,
you're in the frame, man. You're in the frame.
I remember every single one of these things. Like collecting to me is a very concrete journey. I remember buying them. I remember selling them. I remember all of this, right? And so, like, ironically, the one thing I can remember, right, is like, and so, like, I just don't think like I've been fortunate to be a part of like some cool things, and like it's like there, especially with like cards, like there's some cool cards that I have that it's like very cool that like I happen to be the one that got to capture sort of this like, like intersection of just luck and circumstances and right place, right time, history. The person wants to sell, I want to buy. It all lines up, and all those things really do have to line up, because I think about like the English Versus set that I bought, because you mentioned that earlier, which was a huge goal. It took me 11 years to get one. Is not the first chance I had to buy one. It was the third chance I had to buy one, but it has to line up. I cannot, there's a limit to how much I can extend myself, And so and I paid more in the end, but I was more able to pay it. And so I just feel very fortunate in a way that these different things have aligned the way that they have. So is it surreal? I mean, I don't know, because I still I feel equally excited to talk to somebody passionate now as I did then. So the material ways that I do things haven't really changed. I still buy things when it's the right time and they're interesting to me. I still I'm not selling my collection. I'm not selling collection pieces. One of the things I've said for a long time is I told this along the way.
Yeah.
I told people, I was I've said straight up to people that I know what things I have. If you do not buy my entire collection right now, you are in trouble. You know what I mean? Because the ultimate goal is to succeed enough that I don't have to sell my collection, right? And so I got to clear my throat.
Right.
Allergies. So that's the ultimate goal. And so you had these moments in my life where it's okay, if you wanted something I had and I needed a car, you could have bought something from me, right?
Right.
But once I got that car, I don't need the
door's
car.
closed.
So the door's closed. So what do I need next? I needed money for my wedding. Then I paid for the wedding. I needed money for my house. Now I have the house. I needed money to, secure retirement outside of Pokemon. Because my goal was to be conventionally in an okay place, not just banking on my cardboard 401k. Yeah, I know, right? Crazy. And I mean, for what it's worth, I think that there was a moment where it stopped making sense and it did make sense to do the traditional 401k. I actually think for a lot of people, if they're looking at their financial trajectory, they're looking at the career they're in, they're looking at these things, there really isn't a ton of hope in traditional 401k. And I think it is a rational decision to say, I'm going to bet on these cards, because if I do not get these irrational returns from these cards, it's not going to make a material difference. I'm going to be dependent on the state and others anyway. I think that's a rational decision. I'm not endorsing it, but I think it's a rational decision, right? And so, for a long time, that was me, right? If I had put money in the S&P 500 instead of Pokemon cards when I first started, I would have nothing. You know what I mean? I would literally have nothing.
Not compared to what you have now. Yeah.
No, yeah. No, yeah. I wouldn't have a house. You know what I mean? I wouldn't. And so, and,
you'd still be working data entry with your back hurting.
Probably. Right? I mean, I don't know what I would have been doing. I hope I would have come up. I think I probably would have been an entrepreneur regardless. I just would have had worse success. So because I wouldn't have been in a growing industry. So yeah, I think that I'm trying to think. Now I got to wrap it back around because I've gotten so far down the road.
Well, let me help you.
Yeah,
because,
help me.
You're thinking about it from one view, Charlie.
Yeah.
But what you're not speaking to is the view and the impact you've had for the industry and others. That's what you're not speaking to. So looking back over your trajectory once again, but now through a different lens, you've changed. I mean, you've helped grading become a standard for so many of us, which has, to your point, even just with what you did with Luckins, for example, it spawned businesses within businesses depending on services, but now being able to run this at a full scale. And that's just one of many examples. Not many people can say that.
Yet. You know what I mean?
Yes, but
yeah,
you laid the foundation.
You see a problem and you pursue it relentlessly, and as long as you're focused on making the community better, you will make it better. You know what I mean? And so, I guess for me, it's really, really difficult because I am very much an eye on the prize person. So let's step back and maybe this is a weakness, right? It's not it's not like, I don't want you to think it's like an unawareness or a lack of humility or anything like that. Like I very much appreciate like that kind framing, like, but to sit there and look at it, like what I see when I look at it is the work ahead of me. I look at what I want to accomplish. I look at the ways I still see problems. And the more I know, the more problems I see and the more complex those problems are. And I have just this itch, man. I want to solve them. I want to make it better. I really do. And I don't know if that'll ever go away. And so, and I think that is at the heart, like a good entrepreneur at their heart sees problems and wants to solve them. A bad entrepreneur wants to make money. You're speaking to
my heart right now.
You know what I mean? Like, yeah. And so, because you're not going to make it through, like, business is miserable. Like running a business, I think of like, if you, like, it's like the CEO of NVIDIA. I don't know how many people watch like industry stuff. But like, they had an interview recently where he was like, they were like, would you do it again if you went back? He's like, no, this has been miserable. He's like, this has been like the worst life experience. Like, it's like every day, everything's on fire. Like I've had to completely tear apart who I am as a human being and rebuild it into something that is foreign in order to survive. And like, has that been good for me? I don't know. Like in ways it has, certainly. Right. But like, it's really great. Like, it's really cool. Like, I think the way that I most recognize it is like, it's very cool that people like still let me talk like to them, like on their YouTube channel, like that they care at all, is very cool. You know what I mean? Like, cause I do like, and this is where the practical constraints come. So like when you start doing like a lot of things that are very high level, I don't have time, and like time is very hard. Like I'm obsessed with time.
I know you are.
I'm very obsessed with time.
Which is why I'm so thankful for what you're giving us.
Yeah. No, I mean, this is easy, but like, yeah, it's like, I think that the return for the community of having a conversation like this is so incredibly high that like, it is like, not because you're demonstrating good conversation, you know what I mean? And you're giving people an opportunity. Like it gives me a chance to promote like what I think is important, which is ultimately having fun. You know what I mean? Like I really think everything,
protecting the hobby.
Yeah, protecting the hobby. If you optimize for fun, then everything else will follow suit. I promise. Like everything else will follow suit. And like we cannot forget our origin. We are a hobby industry.
That's right.
People will not do this as a hobby if it sucks. You know what I mean? Like and then what? You're gonna have the biggest collection and no one else collects with you. Like, you know what I mean? Even me as somebody who doesn't really need to show people the cards to be excited, I still derive their value from having mutual appreciation for them, right? Like, I just really doubt that, the most famous paintings in the world would be appreciated if one person liked them.
No,
it wouldn't work.
It's not the way society works.
It's not the way that social creatures work. And again, this is like what separates us, humanity. What is it that humanity does? It is social. It is doing these things. The idea of fun, when we think of fun, we very rarely think of solo, right? Very rarely. And even if you do think of solo, it's usually not completely solo, right? Like a crossword is a puzzle you're trying to solve that somebody created. And oftentimes a Wordle, what was great about Wordle? Sharing it with your friends. I solved the Wordle. You know what I mean? Like it's these social elements. So even solitaire, right? You're trying to set these times. People love leaderboards, right? And so even in the most solo, like it's very rarely like totally solo, right?
If it is, it's only in portions. It's not 100%. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, 100% is just doesn't. I mean, it very rarely. I mean, if it exists, it's like like theological hermits, like, and ultimately, then even they derive their value from when they exit the cave and they talk to people about what they've discovered. And so like, and even those people, usually it is social because, they believe that what they're doing is in communication with
the greater good
of God, and so like, even then, like maybe it's not like interpersonal within humanity, but, God, like they are still identifying an other that they have a relationship with. So it's like, like there's basically nothing that's like not ultimately
even Buddhist monks live in communities, right?
They live in communities. Exactly. So
Squeaks, man, good to see you. I don't think I've seen you here before. Glad to have you with us. Do you fear that striving to solve those problems and chase those solutions, that you won't enjoy the moments and revel in the success?
No. Like I don't like. I'm really bad at reveling in success. Is like the one like that is just like it's. I feel awkward in that moment, not gratified for the most part. Like I think that like I love to see like I've put together years and they're turning and something good is happening. That is very exciting to me. And to be able to talk to people like, but even then, like when you, it's tough because like you have to talk to the right people. I have to be able to talk to people who understand like where I'm coming from and that want to celebrate that it's happening, not that I did it. Because to me, like again, like this was a problem that needed solved. Solving it is gratifying because it is solved, right? And so like my participation in it, I feel blessed to have been able to participate in it, not that that happened because of me. Does that make sense? Like for me, yeah. And so that's kind of like how I operate. Like that's kind of my go-to. And so like, yeah, like reveling in my successes for me would be reflecting on the things I did with people and, like, the ups and the downs and the journey and like, just being alive, right? Like to have been alive and to have done it in this way is absolutely gratifying. And that to me is the success. So
Basic says, this is why I love Charlie.
All right. I love you too.
Good to see you, Basic. All right. What about experience though? Let me rephrase that statement. What has the experience taught you? Because as you said, your mind has changed, whether it was from the moment you started to find that postcard after your grandpa passed to being the first time consultant in CGC and kind of finding your ropes. And obviously 4 or 5 years later now, roughly speaking.
Yeah.
What has this experience taught you?
Everything I know. So it's particularly tough, like to summarize what is the summation of all of the knowledge you've gained in the last 10 years. That's a tough question.
You can't do it in 1 sentence?
I mean, no, definitely not. Yeah. So, I mean, I don't know. I've learned a lot of things. Like, I mean, really, like a lot of it has just been like getting like knowledge about like the way that things work, right? Understanding how companies work, how different types of companies work, how working with people is like I've worked with so many different people in so many different capacities at this point. One of my soapboxes is that I think that one of the limiting factors on the growth of our industry is that we have so many people have an outdated perspective that this is a zero-sum game, that they've lost sight of the fact that in a hobby that is socially based, 1 + 1 = 3. Your best opportunity is to work with other people. You have to work with other people. I love so much when I see like really, really small channels or really, really small businesses collaborating, because it gives me hope. It gives me hope that like they will not mess up the way we messed up. So a lot of my friends have done a bad job over time, right? And it's not their fault. We all did a bad job because and this is like at Ludkins, I did a horrible job with this, right? My very first like thing that I did in the industry. Like I really thought other grading companies were like competition, and that was just immaturity. Like I should not have kept people out. I should not have gate-kept insurance. I should not have done those things. And I look back and I just like, that was so like immature. Like a lot of the things the way that I led that company was very immature. And so even though like when I left, it left on a high note, it was successful and like all of that jazz, like, what I learned, ultimately through it, I learned a lot about how much margin does a company need to survive? What does it look like to have a healthy relationship with a supplier, right? I learned a lot about it. Like I learned one of the greatest lessons I learned from that is that if you depend on one other company for your company, then you don't own your company. They do, right? And so like that was a huge learning. Your equity has zero value if it is entirely predicated on a relationship with a different person, right? That is not, you don't own that. That's not, you don't control that.
Which is why Apple takes the route they do.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Which is why a lot of big companies will do that. And I do think there's like a limit. Again, like I think that working with other people, like, okay, like Apple insources, sure. But look at the semiconductor industry that they're dependent on. It's one of the best examples of a modern industry that you could possibly have, right? And the way that has worked is that in a globalized economy, forming these relationships becomes more important than anything. right. Having reputation, having trust, having people you can bank on, it just becomes incredibly important. So I'm a huge fan of specialization, and I would love to see more collaboration. I'd love to see people, and I understand like a lot of people are just risk averse because again, it's like, oh, I lose control.
Most people.
So, yeah. So now it's like, okay, I work with this person, and if they do something stupid, it reflects bad on me. What I'm saying is take the risk anyway. That's what I'm saying. I'm saying that if you don't take that risk, you're guaranteeing yourself failure. Like that's what I'm saying is you have no choice because like the industry will not grow if we do not work together. And that is why like I will come on to a podcast. We've never talked.
No,
we've never had, and our relationship starts today and that's wonderful. Right. And that's beautiful. And like, I'm willing to do that, like with the things that I do. And I would just like to see more people follow suit.
And it goes along with, and I forget who the quote was from, but jumping off the cliff and finding your wings on the way down. You just jump. Just do it.
Yeah, definitely. And also too, like, I mean, just don't be like a big baby. Like, I mean, like really what's your risk here? You know what I mean? Like, I think people blow up the risks to justify things that they're not inclined to do anyway. And then they hide behind risk assessment. Like, I think that's like a really common thing. I think the reality is that like, okay, like if you're in contact with a bunch of people, eventually you're going to be in proximity to somebody who makes a mistake. Certainly I've done that. I've made mistakes and I've been around people that have made mistakes, high profile mistakes. You know what I mean? Like, and what I've found is that, sure, there are like just really immature people who, hold you responsible for the rest of your life and take that to the grave. They're the minority. And sure. Also those people don't have a lot of friends.
You don't want them anyways. I mean,
no, you really don't. No, what I found is that, especially like the more dollars that are involved, integrity matters more and more and more. And so totally agree. What I found is that like, I don't know that I would trust somebody who's never made a mistake personally. I'd much rather see somebody who's made mistakes, made them right, worked by them, like, because I know that that's what's been valued in me when I have gone sort of like to the next level is like what we've talked about, as I talk to people who control more powerful things, that have more money or whatever, that is what they value in me. And I'm taking their lead on that because I think they are correct and I think that they are wise. And so I am going to continue to form the same way. Like that, those are I want to value integrity first.
You want that person that's refined their sword by failing, falling, and getting back up and fighting once again. That's a far better blade than that one has never seen the blood of war. That's for sure.
Right. Absolutely. Yeah. Because I mean, and I think that like, again, back to the sustainable competitive advantages, right? Like if you're never going to find a sustainable competitive advantage without taking risk. It's not going to happen. You know what I mean? And so, because if it was just on the table to be found, like, I mean, really, come on, have a little humility. You think you're so smart that you're just going to stumble into something with no risk that's a competitive advantage? No. Like, I'm not the smartest person. Like, there's so many people that I meet all the time. They're just incredibly smart. And I mean, also, too, you realize, like, general intelligence just has, like, a limit to its usefulness. Like, like, specialized intelligence has no limit, really, to its usefulness. And so, like, you very quickly, like, it doesn't matter. Like, 4.0 student, great.
Good for you.
What else? Or what now, right? I mean, it's kind of like, it's
how are you going to use it?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. So, and of course, I've already told you I'm not one to revel. So, I mean, it may not shock you. I didn't buy a Letterman jacket, because like I don't have a class ring. Like I never was interested in those types of things because I just like, that is not the way that I can, like for me, like what I capture from the moment is just more ethereal.
Fully agree. Navi Station here says, "Oh, that's cute. Love at first sight."
Yeah.
No, definitely connected well in the pre-call, and I look forward to talking to you more, Charlie. I think it's gonna be good.
For sure.
Chef says, "Good to see you, studs." Charlie, it's good to see you here. Hey that he's late. No worries. I saw you there earlier, Chef. I know you're working hard, man.
Just step up your commitment next time.
Yeah, man. You're feeding the mouths of many. You can still watch. Put the earbud in your ear, man. I saw you. For sure. Wonder speaks in parables. Yeah, perhaps.
Wonder speaks in parables.
We'll jump around a little bit here because I do. Even though you gave me some extra time, and I appreciate that, we still have 5 minutes of the original time, so I'll steal a little bit more. But I do want to jump around just to be somewhat respectful and make sure I don't keep.
Yeah. And I don't want to give diminishing returns, so changing it up is probably good for the audience. They're probably tired of hearing me talk about this at this point.
I seriously doubt it, Charlie. One of the things I want to look at from your perspective, and I think despite the fact that you don't have much interaction with it, I do think you've thought about it at least somewhat in depth, and that is the impact on social media to our hobby. What is your point of view? Because you were there, to your point, when it was hard. It was like one or two websites. You had
Sure.
E4. You had a few other things.
No,
And it was
it was,
all
it
just
was
a
hard.
grind.
We had to build E4
Right.
to have community, right? Right.
So you look at it today, and to your point, in our pre-call, like, you can't keep up. Like it's too much stuff. Like email is so much easier than all of this. What is your perspective on what social media has done for the hobby, but
Sure.
also where do you think it might be going next?
Oh, I mean, the entire industry is defined by social media, to be honest with you. So, here's how I conceive of social media. So, social media is the democratization of media through a low-cost platform. And so what that means is that originally you had cable, and you would strike a deal with cable, and that deal was probably going to cost you a ton of money. And if you had enough money, you could get your show on, and then that would be what would be the case, right? That was it. So cable is, if not dead, actively dying, and it is entirely because of social media. So and YouTube in particular is a big part of it, and then the streaming services, which I think are basically just very similar to YouTube. Like, to be honest with you, like in terms of like what they functionally do, right? Which is make a low cost, easily accessible, curated selection of stuff, and you find it. YouTube's a little more search engine, but I mean, like, it's not really search engine, because if you can't tickle the algorithm the right way, then you don't exist.
You don't find it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, which is why YouTube is not a perfect democratization, really. Ultimately, the mystery algorithm is like the thing. So anyway, it's completely dismantled sort of the way that business was done, and so it has reoriented and given power to completely different people, and now they are building their own communities and essentially trying to find things that work within the algorithm that are still satisfying to people, for the most part. I mean, there are ways that are not satisfaction to get views. I think that sucks, but it does exist. And so, yeah, but more or less, though, like, people are trying to make satisfying content, right? And then that will attract viewership. And so this democratization is really, really interesting, because what it allows you to do is it allows you to have a media-oriented locus of community that is built around things that are much closer to what you want, And so you end up with these really passionate sub-communities that are going deeper, not wider, and, are willing to take their limits. Maybe, most channels are not trying to have 1 million subscribers.
Yeah.
And generally, somebody who is really into the hobby finds no joy in people that have 1 million subscribers, because they're creating lowest common denominator products, right? And generally, we would prefer something that's just more tailored to us, a little bit deeper, right, or exactly. A little bit, you say cars at the joints of what it is that we most want, right? And so, I think that is the entire industry is now trying to figure out. It is still in this tailspin of, how do we shift from, this model of doing that to doing this? And a lot of the answers aren't obvious, right? I mean, a giant brand can't easily support, creators because of that, proximity, right?
Yep.
Or because of that sort of liability. They certainly have more liability than I think a small business does, because they have way more scrutiny, right? I mean, you just get more and more scrutiny, and that's the downside to social media, right? Is that the comment section is the downside to social media. For the most part, you guys have been great. What I mean? But you know what I mean, right?
Not this comment section, the other ones.
Have you ever read a comment thread on TikTok? You know what I mean? It's a nightmare, miserable, just the worst takes of all time, piled on top of each other, and then given a bunch of likes by other people. And so, yeah, I think the companies are still trying to figure it out. I think we're at the beginning, not the end, of figuring out what that transition looks like. I think 10 years from now, we'll have a better idea of what that transition looks like. But we're still just right at the beginning. Because, I mean, that media thing, I mean, that held for I don't know, 50 years, 60 years. It's maybe more. I mean, I'm sure you can make historical arguments of different types, but certainly a long time.
Go to radio if you want to go back that far.
Exactly. Yeah. a lifetime, certainly a
Yeah.
lifetime, right?
Yeah.
And so like the social media lifetime hasn't existed yet, and I'm really curious to see like where it will go. So we're still kind of grappling with it. But yeah, I mean, focusing on building locuses of community that are like around very specific things, I think is like the greatest thing. I think that's like why we're here. You know what I mean? Like you've been able to build a community. Like you don't exist in a world where everything has to go through big TV, right? Like Conan O'Brien exists, Jay Leno exists, right? I mean, they're the only ones that get a mic, right? And that has changed now. So I like that.
And I'm grateful for that. I'm very grateful. Yeah,
I am too.
Yeah, I'm excited too. And as you say that out loud, Charlie, I think about the fact that whether it's Pokemon, grading, social media, the growth of communities, we're at the beginning of so many things that are new and at the precipice of what the future is. It's so exciting. It's so exciting to see what's going to happen next.
We haven't even talked about AI. We haven't even
we're going to get there maybe a little bit with grading 2.0. I mean, it's for me, even being there when I was growing up, we were there when personal computers became a thing.
Right.
I still have the Tandy 1000 my grandmother brought home from Sears.
Yeah.
5.25
I had to go to my dad's work to use a computer to write my papers in middle school. We didn't have one.
I didn't have one either. I had to go to my grandma's house and use it.
Exactly.
And it was just it was the beginning of something, and now it's in our pocket. I'm sitting here recording on it as we speak. It's amazing. I love it. So I'm very excited to see what happens, despite the fact that I still struggle with social media. So.
Yeah. I mean, just like the process, like again, it becomes homework. I told you I'm not doing homework again. I'm never doing it again. So that's why like sometimes I'm having fun and I'll do it and I'll appear for a while and maybe I'll post every day for a while. And then if I stop having fun, I'm just not going to do it. You know what I mean?
We're done. So if Charlie drops off the podcast at any moment, you know he was done with this call.
I was just not having fun anymore. Leave.
You got one from Peak. Peak says, what content do you actually watch? And of course, the kiddo stuff doesn't count that you enjoy. And I think I partially know the answer, but obviously I'll see what you say. Yeah.
All right, don't hate me. I don't watch YouTube. That's the answer. So the problem with YouTube is that like the content itself just takes up too much time. I also like I'm generally a pretty focused person, so like a lot of people they multitask, you know, they like do a thing and then like in the background they're like listening to something. I find that very overwhelming. I'm not that type of person at all. Like I
sit in quiet.
100%. Yeah, I just get like very like I have this like just blaring strong like internal narrative like in my mind like and I just like that I'm hearing that so loudly that it's like okay, would you play music while you're watching TV? I mean, most people wouldn't, right? Because it's two inputs, right? You don't need two inputs. Right. And like for me, that's the second input. So it just like becomes difficult. So I'm not a background listener. Like, oh my God, like people that are like audiobooks, you got to get it. I cannot do audiobooks. I told you, I hate having people talk at me. Like that's all an audiobook is, right? And so,
very true.
Yeah, for sure. So like audiobooks, they don't really work for me. I can sit and read a book. I can do that, although I tend to start falling asleep, mostly because I'm behind on sleep. But yeah. So yeah, I mean, it's like I don't really watch a lot of YouTube. Is really the short answer of it. What I do watch, like I get like at work, I am told often to like watch things like to keep up, and then you know like if my friends like are highlighting things, like periodically I'll try to like pop in, but I usually like I have like a 15-minute like attention span for it. So like I usually pop in and I'll say hey and do what I can to support them because what is important to me is supporting my friends. And so like I'm always very quick like if I can to like signal boost, you know, like something that I do think is important, but I am not a natural like consumer of YouTube.
Well, I appreciate the honesty, and that's all right.
I told you I
already know the answer because it was going to be Instagram is I think you said something like you can consume it in seconds. YouTube, it's a huge time commitment, and to your point earlier, you're very conscious about how you spend your time. So, yeah, let's move it here. Basic. I'm not doing it, man. I'm not doing it. All right. So one of the things we'll move to next is a little bit about the market. It'll be a broad question, so just really want to hear your thoughts. You've been through a lot. You've been through ups and downs, multiple growth cycles, down cycles, whatever you want to call it. How do you see things today? Are you still seeing very strong market? Are you seeing the growth? What's your perspective given the play that you have in terms of business, collecting, obviously interactions with many in the community? What's your perspective on the market overall?
I think it is the best time ever to get in. I am more optimistic now than I have ever been, and the more that I learn, the more optimistic I am. Is really just the way that it is. Like I think that the market is in phenomenal shape. I'll tell you, like, this is like a real crown jewel. This is something that I don't really like to talk about because I think that this information is like so valuable. You know what I mean? That like I like to keep it to myself. Like, you know what I'm saying?
I appreciate it.
And if I'm telling you, if you think like this, it will change the way that you speculatively invest in Pokemon cards. Okay, so there's a lot of setups, so it better live up.
Let me turn my volume. Hold on.
Yeah, better live up to the hype, right? All right. When you understand that Pokemon's acquisition funnel is so strong that it is like actively every year, like a third of the people buying are new. When you really grasp that and the power of that, your fear will evaporate. And so I have no fear of going deep when something has fundamental value. Like when I'm looking at it and I'm like, the conditions for this are right. Like the item itself has, true scarcity, like it's attractive, good Pokemon, like just stuff like that. Basic stuff. All the things. There's no magic metric. You don't have to be a day trader to understand this stuff. You know what I'm saying? Like if you really can get rid of your fear because you understood and wrapped your head around like the way that Pokemon survives, which is the best customer acquisition funnel in the world, it just completely changes the way that you buy things. Right? Because I think a lot of people, their fear is like, okay, well, everybody's holding boxes. Yeah, maybe. Everybody in today. So what?
The 1/3 that comes in next year. Yeah.
So what? Yeah. So what happens? What happens 5 years later when 70% of the audience wasn't in 5 years ago? You know what I mean?
Right.
Like, and so will those people want it? That's kind of the core question. And so that is how I frame like pretty much everything that I do from a speculative perspective. Like that is one of the most critical elements.
And I think this is going to force you to probably expand on that, which is a beautifully crafted segue, which we did not plan in advance, I promise. At least not intentionally like this. There was a statement you made at one point, again, not verbatim, around you're never going to be worried if we even go back to a 1930s depression.
Yeah.
Even if it was that level of an economic impact, you still feel positive about Pokemon.
Yep.
Obviously, that touches your point a little bit. But let's expand upon that. And obviously, you talk to people that aren't in this space clearly, and you say, I'm investing X amount, or I have this much of my portfolio in Pokemon, or I run a business in Pokemon. They think, wow, you're huge risk. What are you doing? Like, you don't have a normal job. Sure. You're not investing in these other things. How could this survive?
I love when they say that. Yeah. Please, the more of you that stay away, the better for me, right? Like, I mean, I don't dodge. It's great. Yeah. So like, where does that confidence come from, right? So
yeah, exactly.
So before I did Pokemon, I did like mechanical twisty puzzles. So like Rubik's Cubes are like the most common ones, like that people know.
Can I interrupt you?
Yeah, go for it.
I got something special for you today.
Do it.
Okay. This is just for you, Charlie.
Okay.
So, in my research, you and I hit another point where we probably bond together here. This is gonna be something cool. So I have this little bag here.
Okay.
This is not what I had as a kid. I had to move it. But this, if you know what this is, you can stop me right here. Do you know what this is?
It's a puzzle. I mean, it's an untangled puzzle. Does it have a specific name?
Nope. I'm going back here.
Oh yeah, I did collect animals. I know. Did you find that? Did you find the little plastic animals?
These were my plastic animals from when I was a kid, and I went to the zoo.
I have
just like
hundreds of those. I still have them.
Yeah, they're on here.
Yeah, I don't know that gate. I've never seen those little gates. Those are really cute. It looks really similar to like a really cheap version of like a metal entanglement puzzle. So like I actually thought it was like an entanglement puzzle because it may actually be an entanglement puzzle, and that
it may be. I just used it as a game.
I just used it. No, but yeah. No, it's
Yeah, that was it.
Yeah. I had so many
This is
plastic
my
animals.
kid's toys.
My parents really thought I was going to be a zoologist at one point. That stuck until I realized you have to do math to be a zoologist. So
It's like, oh, never mind. Scratch
yeah,
that.
yeah.
I'm sorry. So yeah.
No, I
Back
love
to
it.
where you were.
That was
Encyclopedia puzzles.
before the twisty puzzles.
Yes, it was. Yeah.
Yeah. I had the little plastic animals, and which very similar to Pokemon collecting for what it's worth. Like it's yeah. So like I got really into mechanical puzzles, like really into it. Like I was like meeting people from like around the world, and like at IU in there's like this minor library that people don't realize, like behind the walls is actually like, this sounds crazy, but like behind the walls is like the Jerry Slocum puzzle collection. And so like he's donated money obviously to have this way, and it's just like literally metal trays just full of like historic like twisty puzzles, and documenting the history of that, and he has all sorts of stuff like tangrams that pre-exist tangrams and are made of ivory, just like crazy stuff, right? Like stuff you wouldn't even think about, like historically so important. And so anyway, like one of the things I always thought was really interesting is that a ton of those puzzles were produced during the Depression in Soviet Russia. And so
I did not know.
Yeah. So when like basically, I mean, you think about it like historically, like in the last 100 years, like it's really hard to find an analog that was like worse, like literally their political structure was collapsing, you know what I mean? And their money is becoming worthless, and they don't know what the future is. And what is continuing to be produced and grow is puzzles. It's games. Because like and this kind of betrays it in a way, like one of the things I love about Pokemon cards is that they're entirely non-essential, right? I'm not sure that they are. I actually think that to do things that are enjoyable and fun is like a survival mechanism. I don't think that humans can avoid doing it. We learn to play before we learn to walk. You know what I mean? Like I am not sure that we can just choose not to do it, right? Except for extreme trauma, maybe, right. Like kids that can't talk because they were never touched as a child in an orphanage or something. Like other than these extreme scenarios, like everybody plays. It's a thing. Everybody plays. And so like that is part of where my confidence comes from, is that I know that when things get dire, affordable fun does not go away. In fact, it becomes more important. It becomes some of the only dollars that people spend. And so I believe that one of the things that makes Pokemon so durable is it is accessible beyond belief. It is very cheap to do. It's very expensive.
Financial level,
yeah, you can do it expensively, of course, right? But that is not how most people interact. And the core of our value is on the breadth of these people who are doing it, right? And the way that they're doing it is very baseline. And so, them appreciating these common cards gives uncommon cards value, gives rare cards value, gives super rare cards value. You know what I mean? Like, and to all the way up to these very niche esoteric things, and all of a sudden we want an illustrator, right? And so I have no fears. Like, and I also think when you look, I mean, look at it. Look at all of these times that the market has tanked since. Pokemon did fine. It's durable. It does not track macroeconomic concerns. And my friend Tom at Pancake Analytics has actually run the numbers on this. And it is a fact. It is a fact that the Pokemon card market does not follow the macroeconomic trends. Yeah. It does not track them. There are different influences. And so that is awesome.
That's
really cool. Like, we found something that does not behave the same way. Like, and you can plow capital into it, right? Like, that's really interesting. And it has liquidity, and it functions as a currency everywhere in the world, Like, and so, I mean, we really haven't cracked like the beginning of the value, because like, importantly, Pokemon has a ton of room to grow in a lot of places, like Pokemon in Africa, Pokemon in Southeast Asia, outside of Japan,
Other languages.
Yeah. Other languages. I mean, there are even English-speaking places that it is not fully optimized. Like, there's so much stuff that like Pokemon just has so much room to grow that it's absolutely insane. Because it's already so big, right? And this comes back to like people look at it and they're like, oh, it's the biggest thing in the world. It has succeeded. No, I think they've done a bad job. In fact, I think they've done a bad job a lot of times. I just think that what they have is so important and so significant that it like has managed to succeed in spite of it. And so obviously they've done some things right. I'm not saying they've never done anything right, but like I do not believe that in its current form as the biggest thing ever, it is optimized. I actually think it could be many, 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 many times larger. So.
Oh, sorry. I had a noise come in. You didn't hear that, did you?
Nope.
Okay. Strange. Had a weird noise come in.
Just kidding. We don't edit.
Don't worry.
We'll edit.
But no, I mean, it's very interesting to see. Let me rephrase this. For somebody in the hobby, it's reconfirming. Like we kind of see indicators, especially if you're in the niches of the niches, as they say. I think we all can kind of see it if you're really looking. Mm-hmm. But to still try to say this to somebody else, even if you show them the numbers, even if you show them whatever data was analyzed at Pancake Analytics, they're still going to say something. Nope. It's going to fail. It's going to drop.
And that's awesome. Your fear is my profit.
I'll buy it. Right. What do you have to sell?
Yeah, 100%. Like and that's what I think. Like it's like, and that's part of why I am like a lot more open with sort of like information and how I operate than a lot of other people. Because like, I mean, I just believe like I don't know anything special. You know what I mean? Like I really don't. Like everything I know is open source. Everything I know is open source. Every decision I've ever made is based on open source information.
Okay, Charlie. I mean, come on.
Yeah, go ahead.
So
try me.
I'm gonna push back a little bit here. I'm not saying that it's not open source, but you have to take into account the aggregation of information over time under one mind, under one roof, holds and wields such a power that to go back for anybody else to try to aggregate the same data in the present time, even though there's more data, it's more data, there's more videos.
Yeah.
But to your point, it will take you time. Yes, maybe you can acquire.
It will take you time, but it took me time, right? I promise you it is faster and easier to discern important information amongst a pool of information than it is to go and do original research, right?
We won't go down this rabbit hole, but I'll leave us with this thought on this point.
Yeah.
That's only assuming that the general population isn't being formed to then like shorter form content and not have a long attention span. Yes.
Yeah, that's tough. I mean, certainly, that would be difficult. Like, I mean, you're gonna have to fight that, right? But I mean, like, I also like, it's not like this generation is the first one to have vices it has to avoid.
I think it's worse than ever, though.
I mean, it is. It is in a way, right?
In terms of like the social media and the attention span concept, yeah, I think it's the worst it's ever been. Yeah,
sure. I mean, I like we're pretty limiting with my kid's screen time, so pretty picky about what he watches. So yeah, no, like I agree with you. Like my actions would agree with you, but I still again like. I think that there is, so first off, you're building in an assumption that the information that I have is good, right? So you don't know that, right?
So, well, it depends on, your actions in the market that will determine and give you the feedback mechanism.
Maybe. I mean, you're assuming that you can get feedback on your actions in the market. I mean, like which is also another big challenge, right? Like getting feedback is actually really, really hard for the market. And so, like, I mean, there's aggregate sales, but being able to discern whether or not that was because you're lucky or whether or not that's because you're right is very difficult, right? And so, and I do little things to help with that. So I don't know if I've ever talked about like my Steam Siege booster box, but okay. Yeah, you watched all my stuff. You would know. Okay, so I have this, it's right up here. I'm looking at it. I have a Steam Siege booster box, okay? And so I use this as a baseline to understand when I make a decision and I'm looking back at it, I compare my result, I subtract the growth in a Steam Siege booster box. Because a Steam Siege booster box should not have any growth if we're going by merits. The contents are terrible. The set is worthless. It is not desirable. The only thing that can grow that box is just aggregate, like just
Steelix.
total brute force growth in the Pokemon industry. That's it. It's the only thing that can grow the box. And so when I want to know, like, okay, how good was the bet actually, and how much was I just carried by growth in Pokemon? I subtract the percent growth of a Steam Siege booster box from the percent growth of what I'm doing.
I love that.
Yeah.
I love that. That's actually a really good metric. Now, granted, it doesn't, correlate
it's not
well
perfect.
over products, right? But
yeah. But like, it's a simple reminder. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, it's not meant to be perfectly scientific. But
right.
yeah.
I like
so
that,
yeah. So I mean, in general too. Like, I mean, I think actually, like, having been a part of it, through the growth phases that it has experienced so far, like, I think that I have a ton of false indicators, a ton of false information. I think if you're making decisions now based off of that information, you're probably at a disadvantage, really. Like, I don't know that factoring in impressions, even subtle impressions that I'm not aware of stuff based on how it was in 2017 is helpful. I think it could hurt me. And so, yeah,
I would agree.
Yeah. And so, like, I personally, I think that the opportunity is greater than ever. And the other thing too is, I'm not saying that you can start now and catch up. That's not how life works. You know what I mean? I cannot have the wealth generation capability in the next 5 years that somebody who has already done 30 years has. That is not how life works. And so, you shouldn't be comparing yourself to you. You shouldn't. That's not how it works, right?
Shucks.
Yeah, it's not. I mean, in general, you shouldn't be comparing like that anyway. You would talk about social media and ruining your ability to be happy, right? That's not a good way to do it. But like, like, I think that the people now are just like so equipped. I mean, goodness gracious, like, you can use, like, you have, like, AI tools will help a lot too. Like, they really will. Like, with your ability to, like, cut through and understand, like, what is actually important to you. Like, I think that's going to help a lot.
I got one here from Ray. Good to see you, Ray. Shining Cards and Collectibles. If we can drop a link there, mods, I'd appreciate it. What are some good indicators to look at in the Pokemon market? We touched a few, but when you judge the health of the hobby and you're trying to gauge a few things, what are you looking at? Other than your Steam Siege booster box?
So I'm less inclined to look at sales and more inclined to look at the way the Pokemon company is responding to them. So, like, for me, a really good sign. Yeah. So, like, if they're pulling back, like, if they put too many rarity tiers in or make something too rare and then they pull back, that's really good. That's a great sign. Like, that says they're still listening. If they stop listening, I'm selling everything. Like, if
every pack has a rare, then you're like, I'm out.
Yeah, well, I just told you that I think that, like, one of the cornerstones of the way that I assess the market is based on the success of Pokemon's customer acquisition funnel. So if I believe that they are making fundamental mistakes that threaten and jeopardize their customer acquisition funnel over time, long term, then that's my indicator. I need to start getting out, right? As long as they keep that churning, there's zero reason to get out, right? So yeah, like, to me, that is a huge indicator. How is Pokemon responding to what's happening in the market? That's a really important thing. Like, other indicators, I don't do this, but I think it is a good indicator. Like, I should do this. Like, keeping a pulse on new people getting into the industry. How are they doing it? I know new people are buying the cards, but are they plugging in? Do they have a place to plug in? Like, what does that look like?
Where are they engaging in the hobby, you mean?
Exactly, yeah. Right. Because a lot of the bets, like, a lot of times when we're making bets, I mean, we're not making bets on the general market. We're never going to be able to capture growth of selling an original booster pack on a Walmart shelf. We can't do that. Those numbers are completely irrelevant to us. The numbers we're generally looking at are people that do get all the way in, kind of like both feet in the water kind of thing, that are buying singles off eBay, that are buying graded cards, that are, making informed decisions, different degrees of informed, but making informed decisions, right, about what to purchase. And so, like, how are people getting into that, right, is really important, right? So, like, I'm not concerned about people using short form content. I'm not. If they're using short form content and eBay, that's fine, right? If they're using short term content instead of eBay, that's concerning, right? At scale, that's concerning because I believe that those people will get burned. right? Like I'm not confident that the value of what they will receive, and part of that is because I think that the effect of like your stuff growing over time is very important. That is what creates enduring value. That is how you have a financial benefit over time as a collector. It's a payoff that you receive for the time that you put into it. That is a very delicate system and very important, right? So if people are buying a bunch of crap and the only value they're receiving is sort of the short-term entertainment value, which is legit, and I have no problem with people selling that, right? But if that is the only value that they have and they are not accruing enduring value, then they are at a systemic disadvantage, and we will have a generation that is not buying in and participating the way we did because they are not seeing those benefits, right?
I see. Yeah. Yeah. Essentially, you cut it off. You cut off the growth pattern.
Yeah. So that to me I think that's a really important indicator. I'd be paying attention to that. But again, I know those are both long term, but like I already told you, I'm only long term. So.
Right.
Yeah.
That's why the mind runs and the music has to be quiet. No background noise.
I just like, look, I don't have time to be doing day trading. You know what I mean? Like I don't have the energy for it. Like I'm not a high energy person overall, you know, like, and I know that about myself, which is why I'm so careful with time. So
you're doing good. I feel like you're up. We're feeling
we're
lively
making
here.
it.
Yeah.
We're making it. Yeah.
We're still good on time.
Yeah. I mean, we're okay. Yeah. I mean, as long as like, all I care about is as long as you're getting value, right? Like you should cut it off when there's diminishing returns in the value of what we're saying. Then you should cut it off, right?
All right.
Like, don't waste their time, right?
All right. I'll do my best.
Yeah.
And of course, don't listen to Walrus because his next statement will be, "I'm losing my time. I'm losing my value." Let's jump into a topic I think you're really going to enjoy, which is grading 2.0.
Okay.
I even really liked this little clip that you had with Pete That Chew. We were on there with Zach and Lee.
Yeah. I do remember that one. I think that was 2 days ago.
That was not too long ago, right? You got that one. But Zach dropped a little hint there. And of course, we can bring into this AI grading as well, a few other things. Sure. But Zach dropped a little hint here around what, what was the name of the company? Tag, thank you. What Tag's starting to do and dropping machines, or at least considering to drop machines into LGSs.
Sure.
And do grading in person.
Yep.
That's game changing. That's huge.
It's really interesting.
Now, I still think there's many perspectives of the hobby, and I think a very valid point you've made over the years, and that is, grading's not a separate hobby itself. It's within the other hobbies.
Oh yeah,
it is
I shout that all the time. Yeah,
right.
Grading is not a market. Grading is a subsection of existing markets.
Exactly. Yeah, within the Pokemon space, and
no matter what the grading companies tell you.
If we think about this in the context of even us and what we like to collect, and to your point earlier, the further in you get, you want more depth and not breadth, right? Mm-hmm. So I don't think this is applicable for everybody. I don't think that everybody's going to jump on the bandwagon to go with Tag and start, skipping PSA or CGC. I still think there's a lot of value there, especially with market resale value. Mm-hmm. But it opens the door, and it starts to change perspectives. So let's first talk about your thoughts on that, because unfortunately, I don't think the conversation got to stay too long on that point. I wanted to hear some more thoughts from you on that Tag approach, and then from there we can kind of dive off into grading 2.0.
Sure. So let me just talk about what is it that catches my interest with Tag. Is that an acceptable way to phrase the question?
Yeah.
So we've never seen a grading startup predicate its value on patents, so that's really interesting. Like, generally, they predicate their value on like old school, like I'm just going to form a reputation over time. Or we've seen it internationally. It's just predicated on like the difficulty of access, right? So it's like I'm going to be Australia's grading company. I'm going to be the UK's grading company. I'm going to be XYZ, right? Italy has one. France has one. Germany has one. They all have one. You know what I mean? And so like it's really interesting just to see that approach, because that's not an uncommon approach in business, but it is like we haven't seen it, right? So to predicate that on patents is really interesting to see. I'll be interested to see like if those patents prove to be valuable, if people want the product that they're producing. or if somebody acquires them, like all of that is just really interesting to me. The idea of, so here's the other thing. So CGC did not in any way meaningfully solve for the challenges of grading itself. So,
in what way?
Like, submitting cards is complex and difficult.
Okay.
Right? It's very, very hard to do. Submitting to CGC is not easier than submitting to PSA. They're both exactly the same difficulty level. No matter what they do, no matter how intuitive they try to make the UI, it is a complex thing because the company doesn't really, the reason it's complex is because the company doesn't want to do the work of identifying the card for you, right?
Exactly.
Like, I mean, that's literally it, right? Like, I actually think that would be a really big thing. That when I remember, like, when I was doing like grading middleman stuff, like my ultimate hope was that we could be acquired by PSA, and the PSA would use us and our systematic, like we receive cards, just to intake cards. I still think that would have been the best solution for customers. But I understand why they don't want to do that because they want to outsource it. And then also too, like if you misidentify it, they can like pretend that they shouldn't have to know and then charge you the money anyway, right? Which is really lame, but whatever.
Yeah, there's an ethical dilemma there.
Yeah, it's stupid, but it's not good for consumers, but I understand it from a business perspective. So like they didn't do that. What Tag is saying is that they're actually going to solve that, right? Tag is saying we're going to actually make it easier to submit. You're going to walk into a store and they're just going to do it, right? That raises a bunch of questions. I don't know like how that works. Like, I mean, like, is the machine going to truly be perfect at identifying cards? We haven't seen that yet. Like Pokemon cards are really hard to identify. There's holo differences. There's just very subtle differences between things. And so like being able to accurately identify those is a huge hurdle. And really the answer with that is that thus far, anybody that has gotten close, there are just other industries where they can take the same technology and produce more value. Medical field is like the biggest one. Like if you can identify cards perfectly, like holo patterns and stuff, like maybe you can identify like cancer. You know what I mean? Like that's probably just like more
deep
valuable.
skin tissue analysis, right?
Exactly. Yeah. And so like it just hasn't trickled. Maybe it hasn't trickled down yet. Like maybe we'll actually take that technology and then apply it here. I don't know. But if they're saying they've got it, like that's a huge hurdle. If they really have that, that's crazy. And I don't know how else they could do it because otherwise you're going to have this local store is going to misidentify cards. And then they're like, your brand is going to hurt because of that because you can't trust that the card inside is actually what you think it is. And that becomes really important because there could be huge differences in value between alpha and beta magic, right? And a consumer, you have to get that right. You cannot mess that up. So they gotta figure that out. I don't know. Maybe they have that solved, right? Because I don't know that much about that really.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, they're small. Like, I mean, I don't think they've done that much yet. I certainly don't feel like they've tried to get my attention. You know what I mean? So maybe like Pokemon is kind of their next thing. I don't know. But yeah, so I'm interested in that and if they can actually solve for that. The idea of the machine being in there is also really interesting. I'm interested if there is a significant margin given to the LGS, because what that will do is it will make the dealer systems that CGC and PSA offer irrelevant. One of the things I think has been the strongest point for CGC is that they have had a legitimate margin on their dealer product, kind of. I mean, like the idea that like, are you looking at the gap versus MSRP? Or are you looking at the gap versus the cheapest rate that somebody can just buy with a membership?
Right.
You know what I mean? There's not that great of a margin, but actually PSA's has just gotten really bad. There's a negative margin right now as a middleman unless you're charging more because you literally like the $1 discount. Like their best discount is 14 instead of 15. You can't take payment processing fees, let alone do
2.5%.
Yeah, exactly. And actually, I think that's really ignorant on their part too. Like not giving that discount, what it does is it takes all of your middlemen and they're not providing meaningful customer service, right? They can't afford to. There's no way. Nobody in middleman grading is legit or has any scale whatsoever can provide grading like real customer service at this point. And they can't take on any risk. Something goes wrong. I mean, they'll just bankrupt the company and leave, right? And that is not healthy, right? So if Tag is going to take the physical stores, take margin from grading and inject that into the LGS, Tag's my favorite company ever. right?
Man, that and it shuts down that entire middleman. But then CGC
they'd
and
all become
PGS has to
middlemen.
follow. They have to follow.
I mean,
can't not.
They won't follow.
They can't afford to.
Yeah, I mean, so look, I don't know what like their cogs are at, right? Like, I mean, I have an outdated perspective on like what it actually costs for them to produce, like a unit. Yeah. I suspect, at least in PSA, that there's like a lot of inefficiency and bloat. Like that's my guess.
I would guess the same.
Yeah, because like their head count, in my opinion, their head count is not like I know I'm like playing with this my little chat. Like
what is that?
Yeah. Sorry, I just like sit here and just like play with his mouth all day. Yeah, like their head count doesn't match their impact. If I'm honest, like for a product that at this point should be pretty streamlined, you know, like their core offering hasn't changed. So like I don't know where all the head count's going. So yeah, like I really doubt that they're going to be able. I don't think these are nimble companies. I'm just going to call it that way. I don't think
the bigger they are.
I don't think these are companies that can change quickly. I don't think they have an appetite for changing quickly. I mean, look how slow they were to adopt TCG. You know what I mean? Like I don't think we should be praising it. I mean, I think these companies are doing the bare minimum. You know what I mean? Like I think the market had to scream in their face that there's opportunity for them to even look at it, you know, and take it seriously. You know, like I mean, the best we got was just simply not rejecting it. Why was I the first full-time subject matter expert for Pokemon? I was when I got hired by CGC, I was the first person ever to be paid through the secondary market to actually know Pokemon cards at a big company. That's ridiculous. You know what I mean? It's absolutely
2018,
ridiculous.
2017, yeah.
Yeah, that's just dumb. At that point, we had billions of dollars every year going through just eBay, let alone the whole market. You know, it's probably tens of billions of dollars. One expert? That's stupid. I take no pride in that. Like, I really don't. Like, I think that was just like incredibly dumb. And I'm still frustrated. You know what I mean? Like, it's crazy to me that there are not, you know, legitimate Pokemon experts that can piece together through consulting like work, you know, like, you know, what it is I just like, I think that the institutions themselves like are either lazy or incapable of understanding what an actual expert is and like vetting that knowledge and vetting like the actual outcomes of what they're doing. And so, which is crazy because it's like, these exist for coins, for paper, for sports cards, right? I mean, like, again, like this is like, the headcount is tilted. Like you look at these companies and like they're willing to bring on a bunch of people for sports. So what is it? Do you not believe in TCG, or do you just think that you can sell a worse product and get away with it? That's my question, right? And so I'm very interested in like anything that's potentially disrupting that, because I just like I would love to see them have to actually do a good job, right?
Well, it actually also ties back really well to the comment you made earlier, and we both kind of concluded the same, that businesses are out to make profit margin, shareholders happy if it's a public company, so on and so forth.
Right.
But the sports is still dominating.
Yeah, well, I mean, look, the sports market is massive and much better defined.
It's far more mature.
Yeah. We're way ahead of that.
And
so, but also, too, sport, like we have to generate our own value as a trading card game industry. Like maybe you could argue we're a subsection of the tabletop gaming industry, but like generally we have like our own category. Whereas sports gets a ton of exposure as a merchandising option, right?
Right.
So you have people who like the person, they'll buy their card, even if they don't do cards, right?
Right.
We don't have anything like that. So, like, I don't know how you overcome that. The only way you can really overcome that, I guess, is just that the media funnel is so big that, like, people are like, I mean, maybe with the collapse of cable, like, there's a chance to realign. That could be a thing. Like, it's possible that sports money is so heavily predicated on cable and, like, that distribution model that the younger age and agility of the IPs in our sector will just outpace them, and it will cause a generational rift where we are able to capture at much greater numbers. And then all of a sudden you have more people watching anime than sports under the age of 20, right? That's an opportunity for TCG to overtake sports, right? But I mean, sports will fight back. So,
well, they better bring back Ash and Pikachu. That's all I got to say. Have you watched the new cartoons?
No, I didn't watch the original cartoons. And so it's one of the things that's weird.
That's
I
okay.
only like these trading cards. I'm not really into the video games, and I don't watch the movies. I do not have any particular like attachment to any of the ancillary things, except for the stapler.
Yeah, I was like, there's something there.
This was a gift. I didn't even buy this. My friend Nick gave this to me. Like,
I like it.
So,
it's pretty cool. I will say, but even if it is true, we have a ways to go, and we've talked about this in other podcasts where, I still question where we are in that maturity scale, in comparison to sports and where we have to go. It's going back to our earlier comment on there's such a positive horizon. Seeing all those indicators that we have at this point, it's so exciting for the possibility of the future, because I think we're at the very beginning of that curve of where sports already is in terms of maturity and growth. So I'm very excited. So going back to grading though, what do you think is going to be some of the next innovations, if any, in CGC, PSA, BGS, whatever the case may be? I know a recent interview with president from PSA announced a few things, nothing ground shattering there, but still some interesting parts. Any perspectives, thoughts, or maybe even hopes on what you want to see?
Yeah, I mean, almost certainly they're all working on technology. You know what I mean? Yeah. Like it would be crazy if they weren't. Yeah, I mean, like PSA's last president was, through the acquisition of a technology company, right? And so he's a really nice guy, by the way, Kevin. And so, like, obviously technology. I mean, that's like the short answer, right? Is that like maybe they probably want to identify these cards. Like, sports has unique problems, right? Like that. Like are just very different, and I'm not super familiar with those, so I just won't talk about them. But like in TCG, like these hollow foil surfaces are just like very hard to like digitally image, and to like do those types of things with it. Also too, it's like I go back and forth. I'm not sure that we really want like perfect grading. Like again, like you saw my experiences. Like I created a pretty good on paper system, and it wasn't satisfying. Tag has to solve for that. I don't know how you balance that, because people really do like 10s, and like maybe I think we kid ourselves. I think we say we want a perfect system. We definitely don't.
We don't. We don't
want a perfect system.
I just had that conversation with my son on the way home from school today. Mm-hmm. He wanted to play with his friends. He says, "Dad, can I go play with my friends when we get home?" I said, "Well, son, we got to do homework. We got taekwondo. We got some activities we have to do." I said, "But you have to remember, son, where he actually started then to go into video games. Why can't I play on the Switch during the weekdays? Because we don't let him play like 2 hours for the whole week. They get to play video games for 2 hours." I said, "Well, son, you have to remember, it's the things we talk about where you think you want something, but then if you actually had it the way that you think you do, you would not like it anymore. It would not be enjoyable. If I made you play the Switch for 15 hours a day, for 3 weeks straight, you would absolutely hate the Switch and never want to see it again."
Right.
And I think it's the same thing with grading. And although we complain, and my wife was just asking today, how can you grade so many cards and not know what's wron with the grades and why you got this and that and the explanation behind their decisions, which, by the way, that apparently is going to be changing soon with PSA's recent announcement. But still, it's that unknown factor. And that creates a bit of variability in what the outcomes can be, a little bit of gambling. It also makes sure that everybody doesn't get 10s and there's no chase anymore. So I think, again, it's that let's do it on the weekends concept with grading that makes it special and still enjoyable, even though we complain and we hate it sometimes when we get burned and get a terrible return back.
Yeah. And I do like, I still think like the biggest problem right now with grading is like I just don't think that the cost is aligned with the value add. I think it's too expensive. Like it's just sincerely my opinion.
I would agree.
So like it's just too expensive. Like I think the system is struggling right now to kind of like deal with that. And I also think that there's a really good chance that like what is best aligned for the profit of PSA is not what is in the best interest of the community. No. And so I think the only way that you can possibly solve for that is to have competing entities and then the competing entities will attend to what is best for the community, because that becomes a competitive edge over PSA. And then over time, through game theory, everybody's pulled towards the middle, right? And so, like, I think that's
too many inefficiencies. To your point earlier, I mean, they're too big. They can't make those changes, and they have to say, well, I have to be profitable. I can't keep the company running if I don't charge $15 a card,
right.
because we got somebody sitting there physically grading the card in X, Y, and Z steps. Fully agree.
And I'll be the first to say, I don't have their data. You know what I mean? Like, there's a really good chance that, like maybe they're looking at it and I'm just wrong. Like, maybe this is the optimal price, and they've really just like have it perfect, and maybe there's the growth rate that they want and they can handle, and blah blah blah. I don't know, right? What I do know is that I'm grading way fewer cards, and I know that my experience is less satisfying than it used to be, because I enjoy the process of grading a card is fun. Not being able to do that for anything except cards that are like $50 plus is not fun, right? And so, like, that to me is a problem, because it's like, this is a product. If your product is not fun, it is going, again, we're the hobby industry, right. That is going to damage. It's going to damage your ability over time to retain those customers. They're going to, because what's going to happen is they're going to have limited dollars, and they're going to choose to do something that's more fun.
Fully agree. Or the next one that comes along that's cheaper, right? Tag comes in, $4. Put it in, good to go. Ryan, I saw the gift of memberships. Actually, I'm sorry, that was Zach. Zach, I see the gift of memberships. Appreciate it, buddy. Again, you guys don't have to do that, but really deeply appreciate it. Thank you. We'll jump over now. We'll start to wrap this up, move into the personal section. Again, stolen some time from you. You're already sleeping on the couch tonight, so let's go ahead and just
we'll wrap it up. 15 minutes. Let's go.
Wrap it up. All right. So, looking at the personal side, you grew up with humble beginnings. We talked about that a little bit. We touched on it in terms of how you interact with Pokemon cards. What was that childhood like for you growing up? I know you moved a lot. Your dad changed jobs every 3 or so years, at least not states. I mean, I think you started in Buffalo, New York, if I remember correctly.
Yep.
Then to Indiana, right?
Yep.
So, but your dad moved around a lot. And I think you made a statement at one point. He really only had a car because of a job. So that created a different circumstance for you. And my mom's the same way. Just to kind of give you the context, she was a single mom, worked 3 jobs. I usually ate what she brought home from the restaurant. Sure. And I stayed with my grandparents or with friends. That's usually where I was when I was too young to stay by myself. So
right.
Can definitely relate. But what was that like for you growing up as a kid?
I mean, you don't really know like what you're going through and when you're going through it, right? Especially as a kid. I mean, it is obviously a survival thing that humans have developed, this ability to sort of just like be kids.
Abstract, right.
Yeah, just and like we're understanding that better and better. Like our understanding of like mental health and trauma and like all these different things is like definitely becoming better. Like we don't like my parents had none of those resources. Like they never heard the words mental health. Like that was not like a thing, right? And so like I think that's great. Yeah, it's a huge advantage, right? Like that people have to like understand like what's going on and to actually like do things and deal with it instead of just like beating their wives or whatever they used to do. And so like I think that like definitely like that is like when I look back, like I think that I had like a pretty rosy outlook for the most part. Like I can identify like parts that were like particularly difficult, like part of, I think that's part of like where I've gotten the resiliency that I have in business.
Exactly.
Like that has definitely been a positive outcome. Would I do it again? No. You know what I mean? Like, exactly. No. I would have much rather been a kid who just got to have some Pokemon cards. That would have been really cool. You know what I mean?
Packs, Dad.
Yeah, but I don't feel like a need to like put a silver lining on it or anything. Like it happened, like it is what it is, and like it's not that I choose to derive like positive things out of that because I think that's a healthy way to deal with it. But like I'm not like I don't have rose-colored glasses. Like I don't like it is what it is. Like it is really difficult. We didn't have a lot of resources. But one of the things that sucks about not having a lot of resources is that the answer is to do more work, right? And so you do more work, and now you have no resources and no family. right? And so like that's difficult. And then, you layer on that, like, like my mom had like a lot of like health issues. And so like that's always really complicated, it's really complex. And so, when dad's at work and mom's sick, like what do you do? Right.
Right.
Kids so,
grow up fast.
Yeah, navigating like childhood like that was like, it was really difficult. And it gave me some disadvantages that, I feel fortunate. Like I think that if like I'm not saying I'm like the smartest person ever, but like I was smart enough to like be able to like make it out of that, and to like still go somewhere and do something. Also, like my parents, like they did like some smart things to like give us advantages, like my parents worked so hard, like to be able to just go. They were always free zoos, but like to be able to go like to a zoo, like they understood that was like a valuable thing. Like they would make an effort to utilize the library when we could get there, right? And so, or like if we couldn't get there, like we had bookmobiles, so we were really lucky, right? We lived in a city that would literally drive the books to.
Nice.
So, like, those types of things were great, and also like my dad was a pastor, so like we had access to like the church. Yeah, we had access to the church library too. So like like always had like those types of things, and the good thing about church too is like you consistently like every single week you have like structured activities like twice a week, right? And so I got to see other kids, like I got to socialize, like I was not limited in that way. Other kids lived in my neighborhood, so I was fortunate with that as well. That helps as well. And I also had like a relatively like safe neighborhood, right? And so like it was like a poor neighborhood, but like people looked out for each other. Like it was like a pretty everybody knew each other. Yeah. It's like the danger is in the unknown, right? That's like where like a lot of times it's like, okay, like poor area is dangerous. A poor area is dangerous when people from the outside are coming and being predators on it. Like it's not dangerous to live in a suburb of Chicago. It's dangerous to live in a suburb of Chicago that's at war with someone else, and then someone else shows up. That's like what's really dangerous. And so yeah, like in that way it was really great because I had like a lot of liberties. Like there was no like don't go past this block. Like eventually you just hit cornfields, so like they don't really care. So, I was able to explore a lot as a kid, and, because I didn't have anything else going on either, like I had a lot of time to do it. And so I have like a lot of foundational memories around that. It was like really fun. And, I got to spend like a lot of one-on-one time with like other kids because, there are other kids in the same situation. So you just spend a lot of time with them.
I did too. I spent massive time at my friend's house. Chris, he probably doesn't watch any of this stuff, but
yeah.
Chris, good friend of mine growing up, man. I spent so much time at his house. His mom and dad thought of me as their own. It was such a blessing to have people like that in our lives. And back to your point about roaming, like we got to roam, and I really hate it for my kids. Like I can't let my kids just go through the neighborhood anymore, like wherever they want to go. It's like,
yeah.
I really wish I could just let you run out and be home at dark and not know where you are.
Well, now I live in a middle class neighborhood, so some lady is going to be texting while she drives her Suburban and knock my kid flat. Like at least where I live, nobody's cars work. So like, you know what I mean? Like it's like you're not going to get hit by a car.
Everybody was on bicycles anyway.
We played in the street all the time, and we rarely saw cars. Like that was the thing. But yeah, no, like I think that also too, like I look back, like I was like even then like doing so much like entrepreneur stuff. Like I have so many funny stories. Like
tell me one.
Like, yeah, like so like we lived behind a church because we were in a parsonage. So like they would have funerals, and then afterwards they would throw all the flowers out. So we would take those and sell them, like piecemeal. Because they throw the flowers away, and they're good flowers. You know what I mean?
They're still alive.
It's something for nothing. And if you show up and you try to sell them, like someone's going to buy one for $1, because you're a cute
Where'd
kid.
you sell it? Where'd you take it to?
We go door to door, brother. Like, you know what I mean? Like,
really?
Yeah, we just took these flowers. Anybody that would pay attention to us, we try to sell it to them. Like we had nothing but time and nothing to lose. Like we had, you know what I mean?
Awesome.
So yeah, like I remember doing that. Like I remember like I was. So like really early on, like I had like a catastrophic double ankle injury, like while I was playing soccer at the YMCA. Like again, I was in the poor league, so it was like they didn't maintain the fields, so they had like these bad divots in it, and I literally stepped into it, and on one ankle I tore 2 ligaments and hyperextended the third, and on the other I hyperextended 2 ligaments and tore the third, and so that is bad. That's really bad. So it like affected the rest of my life. in a really dramatic way. Like I can't play like sports, right? So like when Rusty's having a day and they're all playing like basketball, I can't go play basketball with them, like because I will literally break my ankles, like, which is funny in the context, but not funny in having to live it. And so yeah, like I remember like my kid, like other kids would like skateboard or whatever. Like what I was doing is when they would break them, I would scrap the skateboards for parts and then resell the parts. So like it's like that's like very much like that was the kind of stuff I was doing. And so like I've always been involved in sort of like identify an opportunity and just build commerce on top of it. Like, and I hate sales, which is fun. It's funny about it too. Is like I always loved like.
Do you really? I do
hate sales. I hate sales so much. I love creating value. I do not love the process of trying to convince everybody that there's value because like usually when I create it, like it's very self-evident to me. So like when people aren't convinced, I'm like, what? You know what I mean? Like, what do you mean you don't see it? Like, it's so obvious, right?
These are beautiful flowers. Buy it, woman.
Yeah, for sure. Wait, you like flowers, and I've got the cheapest flowers you've ever had the chance to buy. What do you mean you don't want them? You know, like that to me is maddening. Yeah. So yeah, like even from like a young age, like I mean, like you know, you look back and you see like a lot of these like things that you're doing, and it's like, oh, maybe there were signs, you know.
Can you think of any good traits? And I know you can. Let me pose that a different way. It probably came off wrong. What good traits did your parents impose on you think that made the biggest impact on your career and success today?
Yeah, I mean, the first one would be like a moral compass, right? Like, I mean, like what I could say is like for all any flaws he may have, like my dad has a tremendously good moral compass. And everything he does, like, you know, there have been times where I'm frustrated because what he is doing is not optimized for taking care of me, right? A lot of people, their number one focus is how do I get money so that my kids can be better off? That was never my life. My dad always optimized for helping people and is helping as many people as he could. And if he could help, you know, 10 other people or help me, he would probably pick the 10 other people. And like, that has been, you know, of course, difficult. Like you have to deal with that, especially as a kid. You don't understand it, right? But like, and he's not like maybe the way I'm phrasing it is like slightly more brutal than it really like felt. You know, like it's not like he was choosing not to feed me. He wasn't like absolutely like 100% dedicated. Yeah, well, we're gonna send this to Africa because it can feed 20 kids instead of you. It wasn't like that, but it was like, you know, I'm gonna choose careers that don't pay money so that I can just help people because I truly believe this is like what I'm supposed to do in the world. And so like his moral compass absolutely affects what I do. Like I have zero tolerance for poor integrity. I am willing to cut out anybody at any time. There are big companies that I do not do business with because I do not believe, like I had an interaction where I did not believe that they were being truthful. And so like that to me, like that carries into how I do business today. Like, and I think that that's a good trait. I think that
fully agree.
I think as many people like that need to be that way as possible. And if they're willing to work together, then they will create a social norm that you have to be that way. And it will become the baseline for doing business. Right. And so like, I feel very strongly about that. And I mean, I'm sure I could come up with other examples, but I mean, there's a good one.
That's good. That's a good one. I like it.
All
right. What about where you are today? What does your parents think, and your family for that matter, about you building the success on top of an empire of Pokemon?
I mean, I don't know because I don't really ask them, you know, like I don't sit and just like, hey.
They know, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, my parents, like, you know, my mom's disabled now. So my parents, like, they live in my house. So like, like I've moved them in because I told you they were poor. So like, you know, like they didn't, like they're limited, they were going to have limited options. And so like, I take care of them as much as I can. My dad has a job, but like, you know, I can provide them housing and stuff like that. And so, of course, you know, what does he do now? He's a family services counselor as an organ donation specialist. So, you know, he helps people who are grieving with an unexpected and recent loss through the process of donating that organs to help other people. Man, the guy doesn't quit. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's just like, dude, can you just do something bad one time? You know what I mean? Like, just sell drugs for 1 year to make me feel. No, just kidding. But yeah, like, you know, like I think that they think it's cool. I mean, I think that they think that it's a blessing. It's fortunate. But I mean, it's not. It's like we're always on our guard. You know what I mean? Like, I am not somebody who assumes that what I have today I will have tomorrow. You know, like, I have very strong opinions about the durability of the way that I've set things up, but I'm not delusional. You can lose everything. It only takes one bad move. And the other thing too is you don't always know like how much risk you're taking on. Like, there are times where I was backing bets and I didn't realize the degree to which I was backing that bet. And then the fallout comes and you have to cover for it, you know, and you may lose 10 times more than you thought you had exposure. And that's real, you know, like that really happens. That happens to people all the time. And so like, there's no rung of the ladder you can't fall from. You know what I mean? Like, that's not really a thing. So like, I think, you know, we try to be humble about it, and we're grateful for what we have. We're realistic about it. And that's also like where my perspective comes from of like, and I've said this before, like, don't sell your Pokemon cards. Like, if you have a major event in life, I have lived it. If you become homeless tomorrow, don't sell your Pokemon cards, because it's not going to solve the systemic problem, right? I think that one of the major mistakes that poor people make is that they sell off their valuable assets the second that they hit hardship, and then they have not solved for the hardship. So now they have nothing and hardship instead of something in hardship. So if I went homeless tomorrow, I would not sell my cards. And I know that's crazy. That sounds like people probably don't believe me when I say it. I'm telling you, I'm 100% serious about it, because there are things in life that are systemic that you need to solve for in a systemic way. Your Pokemon cards are not one of them, right? Like, they just function differently. And so like, I think that like, we feel very blessed. But I also just always like, I don't know if I'm ever going to shake this feeling like something bad could happen again, you know,
right?
Like, I carry that with me and I structure my life accordingly. So
beautiful words. I love it. Yeah. You heard it here first, people. Don't sell your Pokemon cards.
Don't sell your Pokemon cards. I'm telling you, whatever hardship is facing your way, it won't fix it.
At best, it's a Band-Aid.
At best, it's a Band-Aid. Yeah. And so whatever the pain is, you know what I mean? Just buckle up, feel the pain, save your Pokemon cards, because I would have more faith in the Pokemon cards, you know? Right.
Well, let's turn it to your family for just a minute, and then we'll bring it to a close. So you got a child 4 years ago, roughly, right?
Is
that right?
2.5.
Okay, two. Okay.
Yep.
So that is huge. I have two myself, as you know.
Yep.
It changes so many things. And I loved, and I saw in multiple instances, whether it was Instagram videos, whatever the research was I was doing, you prioritize immediately. You prioritize spending time with your child, obviously with your family, and cut off everything else. And it goes back to your comments of how serious.
Until this interview, that is what I did. I'm just kidding. Just kidding. Yeah. No.
Oh boy. Yeah. And goodbye, folks.
No, I'm just kidding. No, yeah. Go
on. So with that in mind, you know, how has this really impacted you in terms of your life, in terms of how you think about the future? Because this is not now just Charlie collects and some awesome Pokemon cards, and maybe you have a partner or not, but now you're building a life for a new human being.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, so like, one of the things is that, like, you know, obviously I feel like a lot more burden to like, I can't take on the same amount of suffering to make bets. So like before I owned a home and I lived in an apartment, we didn't have a kid. Like, I needed more room to put my Pokemon cards, and I literally threw our couch out. I threw our couch away so I could put in. Yeah, we didn't have a couch. I threw it away because the value that I could generate by putting in shelves was better. I cannot make those types of decisions when I have a kid, because it is not.
She kicked you out of the room.
Yeah. So like, you know, my wife and I, we can make those decisions, and she's obviously insanely supportive. Always has been. I mean, literally, even before, I don't even think we were dating yet. And I had an opportunity to buy a PSA 10 pair of Greystar promos. And so like, those were rare. Like, PSA 10s of those are still really rare, but like, we had never seen them for sale kind of rare, like when they came up. And so like, I think it was eBirdman. I think he hit me up and was like, hey, I'm willing to sell these. I want $800 for them. I didn't have $800. That was a problem. And so I knew it was like a really, really good opportunity. And so I remember like we were talking, but I don't think we were dating yet. We might have been dating. I'm not like, again, the timelines get hazy for me, but it was like very, very early in our relationship. And I was just like lamenting. I was like, this is just like a really good opportunity. And it just really sucks. Like it really sucks that I'm not gonna be able to do that. And she wrote me a check for $800 and said to go buy them. And so like,
wow.
Yeah, like that is the level of support I've had since day one. You know what I mean? Like my wife is like
amazing.
very, very supportive. And so I've also like done a lot to support her as well. Like I relocated here for her job. So like, it's mutual and we both invest in each other and that has worked for us. And that's been really good. But yeah, and ironically, like when I was published in SMR for the first time, it was a Koro promo, and the Gray Stars are the reason that ultimately I was contacted to be in that. And so because they needed somebody they could talk to about Gray Star promos, and hardly anybody has them in tens. So it's funny how these things like come around like into your career and like and connect and affect the things that you do. So yeah, like with kids, like you can't make the same sacrifices. Like you have to like he has to have a house. I can't sell the house because there's a better investment. I can't do that, right? So that's like a big factor. Obviously displacing my collection. I really liked having a collection room. It raises the bar because now it's like, okay, well, so for me, it just becomes a hurdle. It's like, okay, so I need to have a house of this size in order to justify putting in a collection room again. What does that cost? Okay, in order to justify spending that on a house, how much wealth do I need to maintain that? And to, what kind of a job do I need? So it just becomes like a different puzzle. And so now like the goal is higher. And so I'll just keep grinding because I'm still going to have my collection room. I'm going to collect. I'm going to do it the way I want to. Like, this is the theme. Like, this is everything. And so, it changes sort of the way that you have to go about it. And so that in itself kind of like adds longevity because now you have more things you have to solve for to get to like where you're going. And, like I could get like really sappy with it and say like, oh, like having somebody has made me like selfless or whatever. Like, you could say like those types of things. And like all of those are true, right? Like they're certainly true. But like kind of my default mode is that like my son's purpose in the world is not for me to feel gratified as a parent. He is a human being. He is his own human being that is growing and living in the world. He has his own feelings, his own experiences, all of these things. And so in a lot of ways, I also think of him as just kind of like a roommate that needs a lot of help, And so like my burden as a parent is that I have brought him into this world. And so I'm obligated to like provide this help and to be good and to be a guide or to guide him and to keep him safe and to do all of these things. But I have like a very, very strong sense of like, this is a human, you know what I mean? Like he does in no way does he exist to fulfill anything for me. Right. Like he has his own independent value. And so I'm not endorsing that. I'm just saying it's perfect or it's good for everybody. I'm sure it has its ups and its downs like everything else. But like I think that for me, what's gratifying is seeing him fill those shoes and to be his own person, and he has his own interests and he's funny. He tells his own jokes. Like that's hilarious. Like I'm 2.5, he's starting to do things that are intentionally funny. Like right now he thinks it's so funny to just like pretend like there's this really big serious problem, and then everybody's like, yo, what's going on, and like who's into it, and then he's just like, I'm just kidding, you know what I mean? Like eliciting like a major response from other people, and he's right. That's hilarious, you know what I mean? Like it is really funny. Like that's so funny, right? And so like he'll refine it over time, like he'll get funnier and funnier probably. But yeah, and
until he calls you, says, "Dad, I had a car accident." I said, "What? Are you okay?" He said, "Just kidding."
Just kidding. Yeah, exactly. I hope he comes off that particular joke. As he gets more sophisticated, that could become a bigger problem. But yeah, like I love the ways that he's developing his own personality, and like I love the ways he's growing, and having a family is like a very gratifying thing, and it's like it helps. Like I love having like a constant reminder that like there are other people in the world. Like, because if it's me living alone in an apartment, I just told you, like, I get completely stuck in my own head. Like, I'll lose days at a time. That's not an exaggeration. Like, I will lose days at a time. So, like, having the interruption, you know what I mean? Like
it forces
me out into the real world and to, like, acknowledge real things and not just solve for Pokemon industry problems all the time. And so I think that's very healthy, and, like, I love that about my family.
Help to keep your sanity, that's for sure.
It gives me an excuse because I only know how to cook for like 10 people at a time anyway, so I better have some family. Otherwise, I'm just going to get really, really, really fat. So.
All right, my man. Well, we'll move it off to the closing. Last two questions.
Yep.
Really appreciate the extra hour you gave us. I think we can all agree this has been quite enjoyable and highly valuable. We have many great people in this hobby, and obviously they're with their families for the first time, and we just kind of touched on this a little bit. What advice would you give to best navigate this world of collecting and business and family and having this better balance to make sure that, to your point, you're not on one side when you should be somewhere perhaps in the middle?
Yeah, I mean, so like I think that if you always follow the guiding principle of protecting your joy, that it will lead you in the right direction, and on both of those questions. So, the first question was, how do you know where to look and who to look to? And the second question was like, how do you not get stuck, right? And so, like, I believe that, if you find it turning into homework, if you find it is becoming a doom scrolling cycle, then your joy is evaporating, and you should respond to that. You need to find a way to reset. You need to find a new place to be. Take a break. Do whatever you need to do, right? Like I can't answer that question for you because it's highly personal, right. But you have to protect your joy, and I think it will solve for that. And I also think when you're looking for like, who do I go to? How do I navigate, right? Like when I think of navigation, I think, where am I going? Like what do I look at to know, like, what's the map? What's the North Star? What do I do? I think if you look for people who are optimizing for joy, that it will naturally lead you in the right places, right? If you're looking for people who are optimizing for profit, usually that's not great. You know what I mean? It can be good. I mean, I think that there's certainly a lot of joy to be had in gamifying the business side of things. Yeah. That's not the same thing, right? But like I think that, like, what I mean, right? I mean, I think we all know, and if we don't, then I guess I failed. But like like there are different things optimize for. You can optimize for drama and attention. You can optimize for prestige. I don't think that's a great way to play. I really don't. Like I think that it is not the case that, like, I mean, you can gamify collecting in a satisfying way and then celebrate victories within that, and you'll be able to judge whether the person's optimizing for joy or optimizing for prestige instead of utilizing prestige in the pursuit of joy, based on how they respond to other people's successes. So if they are also taking joy and excited about the prestige that other people are attaining, then they're optimizing for joy through prestige as a tool. And if they're only excited when they win, then they're optimizing for prestige and putting joy to the side. And so, like, I think that as long as you're optimizing for joy, I really don't think that you can go wrong. I think that you're going to have a good time. I think you're going to find good people who are there to have a good time. And I think that, I think that you're going to be able to avoid a lot of the pitfalls, and you're going to be able to solve for longevity. Because, like, again, like, so when I say, like, I think it's one of the easiest times in the world to get in, right? What I mean is that if you get in and you spend 10 years pursuing it the way I did, I think you'll get further than I did, right? I really do. I truly believe that. I am not saying that staying in as long as I did is easy. In fact, it's hard. I'm saying that that's now the challenge, right? Because before the challenge was actually knowing what you're doing. Now I think it's a lot easier to know what you're doing, but it doesn't make it any easier to stay in it, and it doesn't make it any easier to keep your eye on the prize, right?
Slightly reframed here, time in the hobby, right? Not time in the hobby, right?
Yeah.
All paths lead back to joy. I love it.
Yeah. Absolutely.
All right, we'll end with this one, my friend. And that will be, and I'm going to change the word slightly because sometimes I'm getting the feedback that the word legacy throws people off. So I'll use it, but I'll also add something to it. So as we leave this hobby one day, what legacy or thought or maybe consciousness do you want to leave in this hobby when you're gone, Charlie?
I honestly hope that when I leave, like, people just feel like some of the things I created were fun. You know what I mean? Like, I really think, like, that would be like the legacy that I would want to leave. Like, I want to create things that actually, like, create joy, that bring joy, that bring value, right? Like, right. I don't want to be somebody who, like, my legacy is like, he was a very talented optimizer. That sucks.
Hooray.
You know what I mean?
Imagine somebody just pulling that little thing that pops out.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I think for some people, like they've gamified that, and that kind of is the legacy that they want, right? You know, they want to win in the game that they're playing, and that's great. But the game that I'm playing is to create value, to create joy. And so, like, you know, I've chosen to be in the hobby industry, and I hope that I do a good enough job that I continue to have opportunities to make bigger swings at that goal. And I hope that, like, to me, that would be very satisfying. Like if I am, you know, able to get into new places and people see what they need to see in me, that they give me opportunities, right? And then I hope that I perform well enough and execute on those opportunities well enough that I have excess value that I can direct back at the community. Like that's what I want. And I like entirely that is my goal. And so, like, you know, there are sometimes, you know, ways that looks very different. So, you know, one of the things I found is that it's very important to have cards to open doors in cards, right? And so, like, you know, sometimes while I do find them extremely personally satisfying, you know, my collection helps me get to places, right? And it helps me meet people, and it helps me, you know, like get over thresholds, like improve seriousness, improve time and knowledge, and all of these things. In an industry that it's very, very difficult to prove that you know things, right? We don't have certifications. There's no degree, right? There's no credentials. You know, there is nobody on the outside doing that work. And so proving knowledge is very hard. It's very, very hard. And so the cards, in a way, the nature of your collection can do that, right? There are people you can look at and you can say that's a knowledgeable collection, right? Like this person knows what they're doing. So I think that that's really important, right? And that's like not an obvious way. Like I think that your collection will tell a lot about you, right? And so, like, for me, that's been like a really important part of that journey. And man, I really hope that my job also like could help me grow my collection. Like that would be really cool. There's still a lot of Pokemon cards that I need, like a great deal of Pokemon cards that I need. And it's not helpful that I keep getting into esoteric stuff, right? Because like it used to be like the first time when I first started collecting, you know, I made a list of what I thought were the rarest cards, and then I pursued them. You know, the rarest English cards, because at the beginning I only cared about English. Now I collect a lot more Japanese, but I'm still not like my heart is still with English.
Right.
I collect Japanese because I have to, because the English product is not satisfying. So, you know what I mean? Like
they didn't fulfill it all the way. Yeah, I got you.
Yeah, my ideal would just be that they made English better. So, or, you know, by better, I mean more tailored to me, which is very selfish. But yeah, like, you know, I hope that it continues to help me to like grow my collection. Like I would really love to it's one of those things where it's like the value makes it tougher, right? And that's where it's worked against me is like, you know, now like a really unique, rare thing, like is potentially worth so much money that like people can't, like, they just talk about the money, you know, they don't like your odds of getting a really cool gift are pretty low now, like compared to what they used to be. Right. Like, yeah, like I remember like, you know, getting E4 Secret Santa for years and years and years. That was like a big part of what I contributed every year to the community until I just literally couldn't do it anymore. And like I remember getting gifts that just like, those are still in my collection. I have every single one of them. And like, some of those are like I don't think people would give them today because like they're just like, you know, potentially too valuable. Yeah. Right. Like I remember one time I got a gift that was just like stacks and stacks of like vintage advertisements that the guy put together on under $50, you know, because nobody valued them. Nobody did anything with it. Now I don't know, like people probably pay 10, 15, $20 each, you know, and you probably got a stack of thousands of dollars there. And so it's like, you know, in a way like that does suck. But, you know, what I do find is that that's one reason I like to do business is that I love giving gifts. I love being in a gifting environment, you know, like I love good gifts, right? Like I hate like giving a gift on a holiday because it's predicated on a time that you give a gift, not predicated on how good the gift is. What I love is when you have like just the perfect gift for somebody, and I cannot wait to give it to them.
At no point in time, right? No specific point in time.
Exactly. And one thing I love about business is that if you do enough business, it dwarfs the gift. So if the value of your relationship is millions of dollars and they're looking at something esoteric and they're like, maybe this is worth a couple grand, it doesn't matter anymore.
Right.
Now you can give it and it's reasonable because the value of the relationship is so high. So being like ultra high value to like other people in the space is a really important way for me to get
to give
esoteric cards, right? And so, yeah, and the more esoteric you get, like the less likely it is that that person feels comfortable and safe selling it, right?
Right.
And so, yeah, like, I mean, I don't know. There's some pretty cool stuff that I'll show eventually. And, hang out for another 10 years. Who knows what you see?
I love it. Charlie, man, this has been so much fun. I've thoroughly enjoyed it. Can't thank you enough immensely for the 3+ hours of the time that you spent with us today. Please give your wife a big apology from us.
Yeah, sure.
I know she won't be happy with me, but you can put all the blame on me. Tell her it was my fault, and
It's
I'll send her
entirely
some
Pokemon
flowers.
Wonder's fault. Yeah,
That's
absolutely.
right.
That's
I'll send
awesome.
her some flowers. Everybody else, I really appreciate your time as always. It's deeply valuable. And again, we don't get that back. So thank you for spending it with us here today. We hope you found the conversation valuable, fun. I think I did too. And make sure you catch us on the next Rants. I look forward to talking to all you on the next one. Thanks, guys.